Good evening and welcome to the Cabarrus County Board of Education's work session for Monday, February the 1st, 2021. I will call the meeting to order and I will ask all board members to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would just like to announce that all board members are here present in person. We are fully masked and we are 6 foot socially distanced. We have Ms. Carpenter with us remotely. Ms. Carpenter, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Thank you for joining us. And with that, we will move to setting the agenda. May I have a motion to amend the agenda tonight to add a closed session after the meeting? And also, I would like to add, or actually change, 6.04 under discussion items and make that 6.05 and making 6.04. We're going to hear from the Child Protection and Fatality Team Board Chair, Paula Yost. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Blackwell. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sandage. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that was a unanimous vote. Okay, we will move on to our report section, and our first person we are going to hear from tonight is Mr. Rusty Parker, who is with our Career and Technical Education, and this is regarding CTE Month. Rusty, I hope you can do that just a little bit better. Thank you, and please join us.
Good evening, board members. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Rusty Parker. Excited about all the wonderful things that are happening in the CTE department, and so a lot of new exciting things are happening. I know Ms. Adcock had a specific question about CTE, so this is CTE month, and with Rusty, if you want to come on up and share. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Good evening, board members. Dr. Louder, Cabinet. It's always a thrill for me when we get to February, because February is CTE month, and it's Career and Technical Education, so thank you for saying that. What I wanted to do today was to share just a few things that we've done, a success story or two in Career and Technical Education this year, and also give you a highlight of some things that are coming in the coming school year. So I'm not sure who's running my PowerPoint. The National Association of Career and Technical Education actually highlights February as CTE month. And the purpose of it is to highlight programs nationwide that are doing wonderful things in guiding students to their career direction, also providing curriculum and support in general for how to let students find their place in this world as far as their career. In our local CTE department, I really challenged our team to come up with a new vision and a mission statement a couple of years back. About 2 years ago, we went through a vision mission activity. And our vision statement actually is students prepared to pursue their direction and purpose. And the key word being direction in that bullet. We want every student to know their career direction before they graduate. Our mission statement is a threefold mission statement. The first part is to inspire students. I feel like if we're not inspiring students every day, then we really are doing a disservice to each one of them. And then the second piece is helping them create their future. A lot of them may not have a vision of what work is all about or what the world of work is. So our goal is to help them create their future and understand what the world of work is all about. But also the third part of that is that we feel it's our goal to help build the greater Cabarrus community, because what we're doing is building a workforce. So our goal is to help build that community in the Cabarrus County region. The bottom part of there is a purpose statement. Our purpose statement is really focused on being career and college ready. And so our goal is that every child in Cabarrus County schools will be career and college ready before they graduate. There's been a myth in the past that CTE is for students that don't go to college, or it's for a different group of people. Nothing could be further from the truth. So CTE is very much for all children, no matter what their education level, if they're going to college, going to a technical school, community college, or straight into the workforce, CTE is for them. What I have on the screen now is a few courses that we offer in CTE, and just to kind of give you a breakdown of some of them. We offer AP courses or advanced placement courses in CTE. So we have some that are, AP stands for Advanced Placement. So we have AP Computer Science and AP Computer Science Principles. So we have some AP courses that are built in. One thing that I've really challenged my team to do this year is to look at honors courses, because the state gives us an inherently honors list, a list of courses that are just naturally honors level. But some courses that are not, we can develop a portfolio in the district and create that ourselves. And so I've really pushed our team to do that, and we offer several honors courses in CTE. IB is International Baccalaureate, and we offer those courses at Concord, and hopefully in the near future will be at West Cabarrus. But IB courses are in business mostly. Most of them are in the business and IT area. The next two, Career and College Promise and Articulated Credit, have to do with community college and receiving community college credit. Career and College Promise courses are actually where the community college teacher is doing the teaching, but the student's still getting high school credit for that. The Articulated Credit is where one of my teachers here in the K-12 system is actually teaching it, but they're still going to get college credit. So both of them are about dual credit. And the bottom one is probably one of the most important things to CTE. Is a couple of years ago, our department statewide, and now with the new Perkins legislation, credentials and certifications are a major piece of our performance indicators. So I have a picture on the board of NCCER, and NCCER is the National Center for Career and Education Research, and they are the one that provides our curriculum for our trades programs, electrical, masonry, and carpentry, and they also provide the credential. I love this quote from Alice in Wonderland. It's the Cheshire Cat, and it's about, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And our goal is to help every child find their direction. So CTE's focus is all about direction. CTE pathways provide the direction students need to get where they are going, and that's our goal. As far as CTE concentrators, a CTE concentrator is a student that has completed a CTE pathway, and that means they finished a second level course. So like Health Sciences 1 and 2 would be a pathway. So if they complete the second course and they get all the way through and get a credential, then they become a CTE concentrator. So what I've got on the board, I was going to kind of preface a little bit of this data. Up until this year, the computer science and information technology pathways were included in business and marketing, so they were all one. So that's why the computer science ones may look a little low, is that was all one program area up until this year. And also the trades program, they were actually split out up until this year. So it was technology ed was its own area, and then the trades program was its own area. But now those are combined, so those numbers look pretty high. But that is probably the biggest area we have for credentials. Health Sciences does very well, and so does Family Consumer Sciences does very well. To tell you about some of the new programs that we started this year, we really focused on middle school. We realigned some of our middle school pathways so that they feed into the high school. So we added computer science as a pathway at the middle school level. If you go out to some of our middle schools, you'll see that, and aligned with some of our tech ed programs. So we offered also a new tech ed program at Northwest Middle to feed to the STEM Academy at the high school. So we have been working very closely with the middle schools to realign those programs so that they match their feeder at the high school. Also, I have agriculture up there. We added a new agricultural program at C.C. Griffin to kind of help feed Central Cabarrus. So those programs line up. So those are our three focus areas for middle school this year. One program that I'm really proud of is the logistics program at West Cabarrus. We opened it this semester. And when we were looking for programs to open that school with, as far as new CTE programs, this one kind of came to the top because a lot of the business community leaders that I spoke with, logistics was a target industry for the EDC, or the Economic Development Commission. So we focused on logistics, and actually a couple other school districts in the state are offering this, but we're only about the third or fourth one to offer it. Cumberland does, Guilford does, we do now, and I think Winston may. But it's a very well received program. We've been very fortunate that MHI, which is Materials Handling Industry, they are based in Charlotte, and they're an industry trade association. And although they're international, they're based in Charlotte, so they're right close by. And we're very fortunate that we use their curriculum. They provided excellent curriculum for us, and also excellent support and training for our teacher. And also MHI Solutions is the name of their industry trade magazine. And at this month's magazine, they actually showcased West Cabarrus and the program that we have there. This is another program we're really proud of. A lot of business leaders were telling me, specifically in the Mount Pleasant area, that we need an electrical trades program. And so this year we opened an electrical trades program at Mount Pleasant as part of the Academy of Architecture and Construction. So far, it's doing very, very well. The numbers with that we've seen for applicants for the program, it's more than doubled from what the Academy used to be. So we're very, very excited that we've offered electrical trades, and a lot of students are interested in that program. This is another good success story. The flight simulators for the Aviation Academy are in the building. So I got to test one out last week. I'm sure Dr. Louder's going to get out there. Some others will test it out. But we've already had students on the flight simulators, and they're very excited about the program. The flight simulators are not part so much of the 9th grade curriculum, but 10th graders are over there, and so that is part of the 10th grade curriculum. So some of the sophomores have been using some of the flight simulators to kind of build up some of their flight time. I want to say a huge thank you to the City of Concord. Recently, they donated a fire truck to Concord High School's Public Safety Academy. For the past couple of years, we've struggled to keep a quality fire truck there so that kids could actually see how one operates. And so the City of Concord came to the rescue, and they donated a fire truck to us. It was actually just last week, so those pictures are just from last week. And we appreciate what they do very much. That is a picture of a student. I looked for a picture of a student, but he is coming head first down a ladder off a second story. They asked me to do that, but I said no for multiple reasons. But this is one of our students learning how to rappel off a building, so that's part of the Public Safety Academy. I did want to highlight one special thing that happened in our department this year. We have an excellent family and consumer science teacher named Carol Parrish. She's at Central Cabarrus. I have been trying to find for a while how to bring a farm-to-table initiative into our school district because we have excellent foods programs and we have excellent agriculture programs. And the marriage of those two is kind of a farm-to-table experience. Well, Carol found a grant for about $15,000. It's the Outdoor Heritage Advisory Council. And so they gave her a grant for $15,000 to start an aquaponics program in the greenhouse at Central Cabarrus. So she's been working with the ag teachers, the agriculture teachers there, and they've done an excellent job with what they've been working on. There's a picture of some of the heads of lettuce and some of the vegetables that they're growing in the greenhouse. New academies coming in the fall of 21. Currently we have a hospitality and tourism academy that's at Hickory Ridge, and the number of students at Concord High School just outmeasures any of the schools that we have at Concord specifically for foods programs. So the decision was made to move it over there where there's more of a demand. And what that did was really opened us up at Hickory Ridge to be able to offer a finance academy. This past year, I had to do a comprehensive local needs assessment as part of my funding application. We had to look at specific programs in our community that there were needs or gaps that we saw. And without fail, the number one at the top was finance, because we're in a finance-driven region, and we did not have a lot of strong finance programs in our school system. So the decision was made to put a NAF Academy of Finance at Hickory Ridge High School, and it'll open in the fall. Some of the pathways we're looking at is a FinTech pathway, because FinTech is a very quickly growing industry in Charlotte, but also with a finance pathway and then possibly something focused more on computer science. I want to talk quickly about our business partnerships. In our department, we're very fortunate, and actually in our school district, we're very fortunate that we have quality business partnerships. One of those partners is the Cabarrus Arena and Event Center. They have allowed us to host our Career Connections Day for free at their facility. They basically said, come in and we'll help you make it happen. So they've been a very good partner for us. And we had that event in 2019, but 2020 it had to be canceled, obviously, because of the pandemic. This year, we've got another partner, and it's Junior Achievement of the Central Carolinas. They came in and also offered us the opportunity to do a virtual career fair. So March the 23rd, 100 students from every high school in the county, including A.L. Brown, they will be allowed to participate in this free of charge. So we're very fortunate that Junior Achievement backed us up on this and kind of helped us do our career fair this year. Some of the businesses that we also partner with, we are blessed to have many of them sitting on our advisory boards. We have a district-level CTE Business Advisory Council, and then we have several industry boards. We have a board for aviation. We have one for hospitality and tourism. We're building one now for finance. So we have several companies that are helping us. Some of the ones that you see up there, Corning is one. They're very supportive of J.M. Robinson's Academy. And then Decision Path HR, S&D Coffee, and then Code Ninjas is very supportive of the IT Academy over at Cox Mill. And Wayne Brothers, I want to make sure I mention Wayne Brothers. They also help us with a pre-apprenticeship program. I want to end with a quote. Usually when students are graduating, we try to get a quote from them as far as just to define what their program was like coming through CTE. What did they experience? What did they see? And so Brendan Mangan is actually last year's CTE Presidential Scholar from J.M. Robinson. And I found out this year he is a student. He's a freshman at UNC Charlotte. But I love the quote that he said. It says, "To me, CTE wasn't just a set of classes. It was a pathway for me to build my own future as an engineer, a thinker, and a leader." And he perfectly defined what CTE is all about. And I didn't even prompt him for this. He just came out with it and said the pathway is what made him what he is. So in CTE, our goal is to help students find their career pathway so that when they leave high school, they do a whole lot more than just have a diploma in their hand. They have a credential or something they can take with them into post-secondary. So thank you for the time on the agenda this evening. I always enjoy talking about CTE, and happy CTE month to everybody.
Thank you, Rusty. We enjoy being here. This is a lot of great information. I'm going to start with Ms. Carpenter because I know she had a particular question. Ms. Carpenter, would you like to get started?
Yes, thank you very much. My question is, Rusty, just last week or a week and a half ago, there was a special on PBS, and it was talking about the trades industry, and I know that we have just put in place the electrical aspect of that, but the other one that they were talking about were plumbers, and what a great demand there are for that, and how much that a plumber can make just starting out. And are we looking at adding that trade? Because they said that those were two trades that were such a large demand for, and that you could get up to 6 figures just to start out. Are we looking at adding that? And what would be the cost to set up something like that?
Well, I'll say that electrical trades was my first step toward adding more trades programs into the school system, so we made sure that we added electrical. But plumbing is also one that's been mentioned. Also, HVAC has been mentioned. I've had several people ask me about welding. All of those are fairly expensive programs, so we need to look at a facility or how to make that happen. So I would love to see more. That's everywhere I'm with a business advisory council, the first thing they say is we need more trades, people to come into the trades programs. So I would love to add a plumbing program. We are fortunate that the Department of Public Instruction now has curriculum for plumbing. Up until a couple of years ago, they did not have that. Now they've got a quality HVAC curriculum, so they've really taken steps to support the districts with that. We just need to find a facility and a place to put it.
And I thought what was very interesting, it wasn't just for males, or it was for males and females, because they were interviewing a female that was actually a plumber. And so this is for both genders.
Oh, yeah.
And so I thought that was very, very interesting. But this was very encouraging to me to see that. So hopefully we will get that on the table and see this happen. And I know I was talking with Miss Grimsley, and she said that was a trade that she's always hearing that they need with her being in the building industry. She said she sees the same thing, that they're always needed. And the young lady they were interviewing, she said that she went into it because she says you always need a good plumber, and you always need a good electrician, and I know that I'm always needing that. So thank you very much, and it was a great presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
I support that 100% because I know that a lot of children and young people, they, the trades are very, very important, and I think the CTE program is a wonderful opportunity for them.
Thank you. I appreciate your help.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. And just so you know, I actually have a husband and wife team, both plumbing and electrical, and they do an awesome job. So absolutely, that is a female world as well.
Yes, it is.
Ms. Blackwell.
Rusty, I always love listening to you come and talk
Thank
to
you very
us
much.
about the program. I'm always blown away
Thank you.
with all of the different programs that we're able to offer these kids. I feel like Cabarrus County as a whole is just on the forefront of being able to offer career and technical education for kids. Not everybody wants to go to college, and so this is a way to prepare them to be productive members of society, and I can't say enough about all of the good things that you guys do, and I really, really appreciate all of your hard work.
Thank you. I appreciate your help and your
You're
support.
welcome.
Mr. Walter.
I'm also going to give you accolades. I'm very proud of you, your team, and really the community partners coming together and doing some amazing things with our CTE program. How many students now do we have involved in CTE?
In CTE right now, probably a duplicated number is around 19,000.
So 19,000.
Yeah, that's as far as actual seats in classrooms. Probably unduplicated are between 11 and 12,000.
So 11,000, almost a third of our kids have taken a CTE class, which is one.
And that's including middle school and high school, so it's a pretty big number.
Outstanding, and just thank you for the work you've been doing.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Ms. Sandage?
As my colleagues have already said, thank you for all that you've done with this program. I've got 2 questions, and probably more just for my wanting to understand.
Okay.
So I know COVID has affected us all, and some folks are able to work from home and some folks are not. How do you see this play out with this program? I guess I'm looking for examples specific to, hands-on jobs that you have to work regardless of what's going on. How has that been either taught to our students, or how have they received that?
Working in CTE during the pandemic has been a challenge because all of you know that our programs are very hands-on, very much hands-on activities. So we have had some programs that have struggled some through the pandemic. And some of it is not to the doing of the Department of Public Instruction or a state, an education need. Like, I'll use an example, is our Public Safety Academy, the firefighter program. The Office of the State Fire Marshal kind of dictates that it has to be taught face-to-face. So for us to do it in a remote environment, the firefighter program's really struggled with that. We've tried to be really cognizant of what the computer science needs are because we've purchased some software that allows students to remote in on a Chromebook to be able to access their computers and doing some of those types of creative things. But it's really forced us to be creative on how we work in the pandemic. And I'm constantly amazed at how our teachers come up with creative ideas to be successful. They really have done a fantastic job. And the CTE teachers, they are constantly coming up with new ways either to use Canvas in some creative way or video clips that they make themselves. I've seen foods teachers that have started almost like a Food Network show where kids can demonstrate their foods activities at home and they videotape it, and it just turned into almost like a Cabarrus County Schools TV show. So they've been very creative on a lot of the things that they've done, but it has been a challenge for us in the COVID world.
Okay. And I just added a question from you talking, I'm sorry. So can you tell me if there's a number of special needs children who are a part of CTE?
Yes, we, in CTE, well actually I'll step up a little bit. As far as our federal guidelines for CTE, since we're a federal program, focusing on special population students is a requirement from the federal government. So we have to have a focus on special needs kids. In our department, one thing I did last school year was I brought in a position into our central office that is called a Special Populations Coordinator because we had never had that position. And for us to focus very strictly on special needs students was what I wanted. And so we have worked very closely with the EC department to support them in their initiatives. We've also worked with any OCS students that are in our programs to provide quality instruction for them, from modifying tests and anything that we can do to help those students. We've been doing it in CTE. We get a lot of those students in our programs, so we've tried very hard to make sure that we support all of those special population students.
Is there a number?
Oh, is there a number?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I would not have one right off the top of my head.
Okay, that's okay.
That's not a data point that I can quote right quick.
And then
I can find it.
It's okay. That third question, I wanted to understand, how do you identify programs?
Mm-hmm. One thing that I do is I work really closely with the Chamber, Barbie Jones and the team at the Chamber. I work very closely with David Hollers and the Workforce Development Board. And then also I work very closely with Paige Castrodale at the EDC, Economic Development Commission. Between those 3 people, they kind of give me data points on what the needs are in the community. When I was selecting aviation for West Cabarrus, the number one thing I did was went to the Workforce Development Board and also the EDC to see what are their target markets, what are their target industries they're looking to do. So that is really the big data point that came about to bring aviation to West, and also logistics. So one thing I do is really stay as close as I can to the business community. I tell people a lot of times I work for the school system, but I have one foot very firmly planted in the business world. So I'm kind of the go-between between the two. But if I didn't have the business leaders in our community helping me make those decisions, I'm not sure where I'd be right now with some of those programs.
And before I move on to Mr. Farrar, I'll segue that into, you are very involved with the Building Industry Association as well. You sit on that board and along with Crystal, and you are very well much in a tune what's going on from that aspect, from what builders are looking for and those trade skills that are lacking, and we appreciate your involvement in that as well.
We appreciate your help very much from home
It's
builders.
wonderful. We love having you there and
Thank
you
you.
hearing those conversations when things are taking place, and all the changes that have taken place with COVID, has made us all move in different directions.
Right.
And it's hit the construction industry, extremely hard, and you're able to hear a part of those conversations. So we appreciate you being a part of those as well.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Furr.
I just want to say that, I'm proud of a lot of things this school system offers, but don't tell anyone, but I think this is my favorite. And since 2008, we've came a long way. And the new transportation, distribution, logistics hits close to me because that's what I do for a living. And so I'm going to pay you guys a visit real soon at West Cabarrus and kind of see what's going on because I'm
I'd
interested.
love for you to.
Now, one thing I got interest in, diesel mechanic. I know we do auto mechanics. Is there a diesel mechanic program associated with that?
There is usually, for that program, we have to work with the community college. We use,
Okay.
like I mentioned, Career and College Promise earlier, we work with RCCC to do some of that. If there's students that are interested in a specific area of automotive, usually we refer them to the community college to do it that way. All of our programs in-house, we have 4 automotive programs, and they're all basic introduction to automotive. It's not as specific as doing brakes or electrical or that type of thing.
Yeah, that's good because it's definitely something that's we need. I'm fortunate that I got 3 little small companies, and 2 of them are distribution companies, and one's a logistics company. So I'm very interested and glad you got this going.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Adcock.
I'll just say this is really great. This is an area that I really am very interested in as well. And I know I heard at the beginning of your presentation, you said that this is not just for kids that are not going to college, but also kids that are going to college. And one thing that I would say would be, in addition to this, would have some kind of leadership development courses that would help people that are going to move into management or some type of level of leadership at some point. I think our young people especially now, they would really do well with leadership development. And then just a question, do you have graphic design? Is that part of this as well?
We do. As part of the academy at Cox Mill, the IT Academy, they have 2 pathways. One is computer programming, and they teach Python programming 1 and 2. But the other side of the house is the Adobe Academy. And so with the Adobe products that we have, they teach graphic design. That's the pathway. So we do have that. And I will say too, some other schools like I think Mount Pleasant does this, and we've tried to kind of push it out around the district at some other places, is to teach more graphics. So Mount Pleasant also has that program. It's not an academy, it's just a pathway in CTE. So there's a little bit of a difference in the number of courses the students take, but yes, we do have it at multiple places.
Okay, thank you so much. It was a
Thank you.
great presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rusty, for being with us tonight. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Have a good evening, everybody.
You too, you too. Okay, board members, we will move on to our items under number 4, which is the discussion, and this starts with the COVID-19 update. Actually, Dr. Louder and I both are on a Monday, I know you've heard us say this many times, Monday, 9 a.m. phone call with the Cabarrus Health Alliance in the hospital, and numbers were trending down. We heard good things. I think Dr. Louder will also say that we heard good things. We know the community is not where it needs to be or where we would like to have it be, but we know that just, for instance, within the past couple of weeks, the statistics of positivity has went from 18.4 to 16.2 to 13 down to 12, and we're hearing a little bit of a possible report this evening of 11.2. So we know that they are trending down in the right direction, and if we don't say anything, that's a great thing to hear today. I'm going to save the rest of the reports. We will be having the presentation regarding the task force recommendations, so I'll save the rest for that and move us on to items number 5 under the consent agenda. And we will have Ms. Kelly Klutz, who will start with 5.01 with our budget amendments. Ms. Klutz?
Good evening, Board. We have 3 budget amendments before you today. If you will pull those up for us, please, Larry. We'll start with the state budget amendments. There's minor adjustments there. to the state. A few additions overall, an addition of $77,000, but small budget amendments for the period. Larry, we're still seeing the COVID. Okay. There we are. Okay, and then we'll move on to the second one, which is the federal budget amendments. Again, some small adjustments, a couple of grants that we've received, one especially for EC, and then we will move the funds. So we're required with federal funds to set aside an equitable services portion, and once we've satisfied that, we can pull that back into our funds, and so that's what we're doing there. And then finally, in the capital, this is the funds that the county has allocated for the virtual Cabarrus Virtual Academy mobile unit. Okay. And that's all the budget amendments I have. Do you have any questions?
Ms. Adcock, I will start with you.
I think just a clarification, what is the Virtual Academy mobile unit?
So we started the Cabarrus Virtual Academy for students who want to attend virtually 100%. So that was started this year, but we didn't have a physical location for them. So because we put that together really quickly, they are housed at West Cabarrus right now because they don't have a senior class there. But we had to have a plan and a way to facilitate that school, and so this mobile unit will allow us to do that. The Facilities and Maintenance Department will put that in and remodel and get that ready for them starting in August.
Thank you.
Kelly, if you don't mind, that may need a few more details. Can you just describe that actual process just a little bit more, what that really means and how that will take place as far as the learning environment?
I'm going to let someone else talk about the learning environment.
Or maybe Dr. Louder. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so there's still, they're 100% virtual, but there are some classes, especially going forward, where they want to mix that a little bit, where you may have one period where they are meeting with the teacher periodically. There's also a place to kind of where teachers may meet with students if they need help, where if they had a parent conference they may want to talk to. So they're going to have a home basically that they can work out of that'll have classrooms, because some students may be completely virtual. Other students may do part of the class face-to-face. They may do a class face-to-face. And so as Ms. Klutz said, most school systems in the state, when the governor basically said you had to have a remote option, came up with at least some form of a virtual school. And Dr. Hill and her group are working with what that looks like, next year in the second group, and that's really to have kind of a hybrid at times depending on. So let's say we're all back normal when this coming school year starts, everybody's face-to-face, everybody has a vaccine, then we're still going to have a virtual academy where people may say, well, even though I want to be virtual, or I have a scheduling problem because of something that I'm involved in and want to access it that way, that we want to run. So we had about 30 students or 30 or 40 students that were kind of learning that way prior to COVID, and so it was something that we were interested in making bigger and making open to more people, and so this really just sped that up a little bit. And so Mr. Taylor, as he always does, kind of finds a mobile unit that we can, for a cheap price, that we can remodel, and the county was very supportive of us making sure that they had a home for ultimately what is now our 43rd school.
I think it's just worth repeating that the general public and most everyone needs to understand that is always going to be an option. So they need to understand that will always remain an option, no matter what plan we're in. Okay, Mr. Furr. All right, Ms. Sandage.
Ditto, no questions. Thanks, Kelly.
Mr. Walter.
Where are we going to put this mobile?
Yes, there was essentially a water and sewer line that was near Winkler Middle School. So if you think the area between Winkler Middle School and the PLC was a place where we could place a mobile unit like this, then hook up to the line. So it was a really good location for a variety of reasons, and cheap as far as a lot of the infrastructure was already there. So it's going to be between Winkler and the PLC.
I don't think that'll create any traffic issues.
No, we don't think so. I mean, as a general rule, there's not going to be lots of people coming in and out. They can come in and out, but there's not going to be a lot of traffic one way or the other from that location.
Okay, and this is an ask for the county, or is this out of fund balance, or how are we paying for this?
It's already been funded.
Okay, by the county.
Yes, that's correct.
Ms. Blackwell?
So on the same note, as far as the mobile unit, I was just curious, I think I remember us talking about the mobile units at Central Cabarrus and how there were maybe like 10 that weren't being used to house students. So I didn't know if, I mean, maybe that was something that we could use, maybe one of those extra. I know that they're probably storing things there, but I just didn't know if we could use one of those rather than having to get a whole new one.
So the ones at Central Cabarrus are smaller units, and so they're kind of individual classroom type situations, and we needed a larger, this is more than an 8-plex, correct?
Yeah, it has a kitchen area or area that you can serve food from. It has bathrooms in it, so it ultimately is much more than just individual units. It's kind of, the closest thing to think about is at the Early College of Technology that they operate out of. So it really is kind of a home that they can use for lots of, again, hybrid learning whenever we come back.
Ms. Carpenter, do you have anything?
No, all my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Okay, may I have a consensus to move item 5.01, the budget amendments, to the consent agenda for the business meeting?
So moved.
All okay? Good, I just need a consensus.
Yeah.
Are you good? Okay, great. Thank you. So consent agenda. Next, we will have 5.02. We will have Mr. John LeGrand, who will be presenting with the capital improvement plan, or it looks like we're going to have both he and Mr. Tim Louder. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening to members of the board. The slide that I am presenting to you tonight is this capital plan sequencing order that was approved in a joint presentation with the Cabarrus County Board of Education and the Cabarrus County Commissioners in October of 2019. This slide lists the 12 projects identified, added, and approved at that time in priority order, starting with Roberta Road Middle that is now currently under construction. This is the same slide that we recently displayed and discussed at the January 23rd planning session, and at the request of the board was added to tonight's agenda. Our Executive Director of Facilities and Operations, Mr. Tim Louder, and I are here to answer any questions you may have as you continue your discussion on this topic. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I just felt like it was important, since this had not been approved since 2019, and of course, especially with the new board, that we just had an opportunity to just approve it and probably not make any real modifications to it, but definitely want to open it up to the new school board members to have an opportunity if they will. And with that, I'm actually going to start with Ms. Carpenter. Ms. Carpenter, any questions or comments?
The only question I have is, have they put the new heating and air condition into Beverly Hills? Because that was one of my biggest concerns. When we had toured the school, that was, the big concern, that heating, air, all that stuff was going to go out at any time, and it could just go out. And if they had to replace it, it was going to be $5-6 million. It was going to be a large amount. And if that was replaced, it could not be, they would have to put a new one in, and it couldn't be, if they rebuilt that one, then it couldn't be reused. They would have to cannibalize it and put it maybe somewhere else, but, it couldn't be used in the new building when they would replace that building. Now, have they did anything on that system at all?
No, ma'am. All we've done on it right now is just preventive maintenance.
Okay, so it has not been. So if something would break down on that one and they would replace that one, is the statement I made, is that true? I mean, it couldn't be used in a new building. If we went to build a new building, they would have to take that one out if we put one in, correct?
We might be able to use parts of it, but most likely the building that we'll put back will be much larger and oriented so much differently that it would not use much of a new system in a new building. As far as if you took that one out and tried to use it somewhere else, it probably would not work well.
Yeah, so we would not be able to use that one. So that's what I'm saying. I would have to look at what that one would cost and what it costs to do a new building. Would it be better to do, not do that one and do that building? Because to me, aren't you losing some in that aspect? Because how much of that air conditioning could you use? Wouldn't you be losing some of the value of that?
We would obviously lose all the ductwork system within the building that you had to replace in there, and all you could use maybe would be the compressors or the chillers that we would put in for the system.
With that, and that's the only thing. And how is it? I mean, how much life do you still think we have in that one? I know y'all been doing an excellent job on it though, because I know y'all been doing great with it, because they've been doing really great in maintaining it. They really have, and that was one of the big concerns, because everybody kept saying it's going to go at any time. And how many years has that been now?
So, Ms. Carpenter, I think Mr. Ryder, if you don't mind, I'll step in. At some point in time, we've discussed as a board to take a trip and go check facilities and do, just some real good capital checks on some of the older buildings, because I think we probably have similar situations in many of our older schools. I'm not sure that we can single that one out in one night. We appreciate you putting that as number 12 and not number 22. Thank you, John. But Ms. Carpenter, I think since that's really not in our top funding at this point in time anyway, and we've all decided that at some point in time, once we get past, when we can go out and take a visit and look at some of the older buildings that have some similar situations, maybe that's a deferred discussion if that's okay with you.
Yeah, because, there was a lot of discussion and we've moved things around. And, after this virus is, slowed down, that may be what we need to do, because we don't know how things are going to shake out after all this. And so that may be what we need to do, because we may need to, we're thinking that things are going to pick back up and we're going to see everything explode back, but they keep saying our population is going to even itself back out, and we're going to see our numbers kind of even themselves out. So they keep saying in 5 to 7 years we're going to see everything level out, where we're not going to see our growth like it's been. So we may not need to be doing all this stuff. So I really think we may need to do some adjustments on this.
Okay,
And
so can we actually put that on for maybe a further discussion later on, that maybe after a trip that we can take and do some type of assessment later on when that, maybe things change within the community, that we can actually do that as a board? Would that be okay with you?
That sounds good.
Okay, great.
I think that may need to be done.
Okay, great, thank you. And Ms. Blackwell?
I don't really have any questions, just because I was kind of there for all of this extensive planning that we did for this, and we did get to go and do a tour last year of some of the older buildings, and so I was blown away to be able to see just the amazing work that you guys have been able to do to keep up some of those buildings, and some of them are truly in desperate need. So that's why, we've got R. Brown and Coulter and Webb, and Beverly Hills is on there, and so we're just thankful to have them on there. I'm just, I know that all of this is such a work in progress of trying to get through these as many as possible, as quickly as possible, but funding is always an issue. So, just thank you for putting all of these on the radar so that we can get good facilities for all of the kids in Cabarrus County as soon as possible.
Mr. Walter?
Thank you. I've been thinking about this a little bit, I keep looking at the number of 291.5 million for 12 projects. And I look at to see are there other projects that maybe ought to be highlighted, at least on there, like Laura was saying here, if it's not on our radar, it's not going to, you got to put it on the plan so it's on our radar. And the two things that stick out to me is, as Mr. Parker said here today at Concord High School, that we wanted a public safety complex and we have major stadium issues that need to be repaired. And it was on our 2016 plan for $4 million. And then we have our busiest middle school with Harris Road that doesn't even have an auditorium. So I think those two projects, we ought to consider at least putting them on the plan to keep them on the radar and increasing this 291 by 2%, make it 300 million. That would be my recommendation. And I also had a question regarding, we had that, as was mentioned by Ms. Carpenter and others, we had a facility study that was done that evaluated a bunch of buildings, and it had replaced Royal Oaks, Beverly Hills, Mount Pleasant Elementary. I've never heard anything about Mount Pleasant Elementary. What is the status of that school?
We've done some pretty extensive renovations at Mount Pleasant Elementary School. We put a new roof and got a new heating and air conditioning system and a new electrical system. So it's in pretty good shape. We've done a lot of remodeling inside, so it's probably about as good a shape as it's going to be. It's very much exactly the same school as, yes, sir. Thank you, Tim. Wolf Meadows. And so they're both the same type of school. Wolf Meadows is probably in a little bit worse shape than Mount Pleasant actually is.
So should we be considering Wolf Meadow, or we're going to do improvements to that school too?
Well, we've done improvements there as well, but I'm going to say there are schools that are in our 35-year-old range, so they're probably half as old as some of them that are really, 70 years old.
Right, but this was on the replace list done 6 years ago.
Yes.
So we've done, you've done improvements, so it's no longer on the replace list.
So it needs to be replaced, but it's obviously, if you're looking at it from a caliber standpoint, if you've got 70-year-old schools versus 35-year-old schools, obviously the 70-year-old schools are going to be the ones you want to look at first.
Well, it's not just age though, it's condition, and that's why we paid that money for that study, so they could evaluate the different buildings. It's not completely dependent on age. So.
And some of those conditions have been met. Like I said, the electrical system was one they had a really problem with, the HVA system and the roof systems, and they all have been replaced at Mount Pleasant in order to be able to meet with that.
Okay, so that makes me more comfortable that we're not ignoring that school. We have taken some steps to keep it off the immediate replacement list. Thank you.
Ms. Sanders?
So I went back and I looked at this as well, and just had a question about the Opportunity School. And the reason why, for me, it houses some of our most vulnerable children. And I just wanted to know, because I wasn't a part of the other discussions, why is that not further up on our list? So that was my only question, and I'm okay with discussing this at a later time, once we've been able to see the buildings. But I've been there, and that building is problematic. I mean, I literally just went there 2 months ago, so.
Yes. I don't know why obviously it's it's what the board agreed to. So that's kind of what they're right now.
Yeah, there was an exercise done with the board members that were here in October 2019, and they decided the priority order, or approved the priority order through a series of discussions, and that's where the Opportunity School ended up.
That's okay. We're not going to put you on the spot tonight for sure. This actually, to me, was just more important that we're getting ready to start the budget process. This is what's been approved between the county and the Board of Education. We appreciate them prioritizing our capital plan completely. And even if we do need at some point in time to revisit it, I think it'll be much more productive. As Ms. Blackwell stated, it was very beneficial to her as a new board member. I had prior been out to schools, being on the board before. Tim as well had been there. But I think with the new board members, a trip to all of the older facilities so that you can see, because even the Opportunity School, which definitely that's very valid, there may be something else that you even think is even more important or that needs to be organized in that itemized list. But at some point in time, I think we need to move forward with what we have tonight, everybody be on the page, or that needs to be discussed. And then at some point in time in the future, make some trips, take some looks, and see if we need to revisit again, if that's okay with you. Are you good? Moving on.
I really got no questions. I know these guys do the best they can do with the money that's given to them, and the county's doing the best they can do. It's just we we just don't have enough to go around, but like we've mentioned earlier, they do an outstanding job keeping them going, so I still want to see number 12 back to 22.
Ms. Adcock?
I don't have any comments other than this is great, and just to see the future, put on a piece of paper like this and to see how we're growing, it's really exciting to think about the school system and how we're thinking of all the growth ahead of time and have these plans. So thank you very much for what you do.
And we would also like to thank the facilities and maintenance group and that department. This is a joint effort for sure between construction, facilities, Dr. Louder and his staff, the county commission, the county manager, it's a team effort in figuring out what really needs to be looked at, needs to be addressed in a priority list. And when new board members come on, I know that list was very intimidating to me because, when you want to put it in perspective, we have 43 buildings, some new, some very old, and that's a task to put that in order of priority. But at some point in time, I think when we can arrange it, when time allows and the current situation allows, we'll discuss a trip and go out so that everybody can take a look and see if this needs to look different to us in the future. Okay, Dr. Louder, would you like to make any comments regarding that?
No, just appreciate everything that's done and the work with the county as we talked about at the retreat. Their support of this, again, one of our biggest challenges is to figure out how to replace older schools. They're often the ones that get forgotten, and in this situation, we replaced Odell at its old location, Mount Pleasant Middle School, Royal Oaks, and the reason that they're prioritized this way is we want to do the same thing with McAllister and Coultram Webb and also create space. So a really smart use, I think, of space and seats to be able to figure out how we keep replacing older buildings and create seats, and that's a tribute to these guys and the work that they've done, so we appreciate all that.
Thank you. So I'm hearing, is everyone okay with a consent agenda?
I'd like action. I'm not comfortable.
Action, okay. Is everyone okay with action? Okay, so we will move item number 5.02, capital improvement plan, to our action agenda for the business meeting. Thank you, Mr. Louder. Thank you, Mr. LeGrand. Okay. Now we will move on to items for consideration for action, starting with 6.01, Second Chance EOG, EOC Summer Program, and that will be presented by Dr. Crystal Hill.
Good evening again, Madam Chair, Dr. Louder, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you our Second Chance EOG and EOC Summer Program. Now, before I get started, I want you to know that pretty much this is the exact same presentation that we shared last year, with the exception of the change of dates, and we've added 3 additional schools. The plan was approved by the board last year, but unfortunately, because of the emergency school closures, we were unable to have this program. So I'd like to go ahead and get started for you. So the program requirements is, it requires local Board of Education approval. We have the ability to provide a second chance, a second opportunity for students to retake the EOGs, which is the end of grade test, and the end of course test, EOCs, which is for our high school. The program must occur after the regular school year, and it is only for non-proficient students. Students are only allowed to take one assessment, one assessment per student. Participation is voluntary, and students must participate in all 3 days. So the first 2 days will be remediation, and then the third day is the actual retest. The highest score is reported, and the second chance scores are included in the school district proficiency, but not growth. So basically what that means is when students take their EOG or EOC for the very first time, we always want kids to do their very best because that's what our growth is based on. However, the proficiency, meaning if they score, if they're on grade level or if they're not on grade level, that's where they get the second chance to do that if they're not proficient. We will house this program at multiple schools. Our traditional schools in Wolf Meadow will be June 7th through 9th because that's at the end of their school year. Our early colleges, as you know, of course, end earlier. So they will be doing their program May 17th through 19th. We plan to provide transportation. We also plan to provide snack and lunch for all of our students. Now, our personnel for the program, our assistant principals will serve as the site administrators, and then we will hire certified staff to serve as teachers. So because it's out of their normal contract, we will be providing them their hourly rate and pay them hourly for the services that they provide. Our curriculum and instruction team works really hard to provide the resources for them and will also fill in and support where needed. When we did this 2 years ago, we were also able to provide school nurses that supported multiple schools, so we plan to do that as well to make sure that we're accounting for all of the needs of our students during this time. So why would we do this? There's advantages for our students, and then there's also advantages for the school. So for students, it actually acts as a score replacement. So what happens is the student takes their test the first time. If they're not proficient, they have the opportunity to take it again. So if they score a level 2, and then when they retest, when they score a level 3, 4, or 5, that new proficient score replaces on their permanent record. Also for high school, as you all know, our high school end-of-course tests account for 25% of a student's final grade. So when students retest, the new grade equivalent for that test will then change their grade, which is on their permanent record as well, their transcript. This also allows additional opportunities for consideration for our program choice. Some of our program choice schools do have a requirement, so this allows another opportunity for that. And then this year, of course, it allows us another opportunity to mitigate for any COVID impact. The school advantages, again, it does not count for their growth, but it does account for their proficiency, and it does allow for a potential school performance grade increase. The assessments that are available this year, we're not able to offer it for all assessments, but we will be offering it for 3rd through 8th grade math, 5th and 8th grade science, math 1, math 3, and biology. This year, our English language arts scores for grades 3 through 8 will be delayed, so they're not eligible. We actually won't get individual student level scores for them until August, and that's because we will be the state's doing some renorming. So we won't have individual scores for those students, so therefore they cannot retest. Our English 2 written scores every year are delayed. For the English 2 high school course, there's a written portion of the test, and what happens is we get the initial score for students, how they did on the multiple choice portion, but we do not get a score for the written. So by the time this program happens, we will not have all the scores for the written portion back, so therefore we will not be retesting for English 2. The next couple of slides just provide the detail. So the school that has the star next to them will serve as the program site, and then the schools that are listed under them are the schools that would attend. So for example, at Carl A. Furr Elementary School, they will house the program there, and it will be for Furr students and also students that attend Weddington Hills. Our day will run 8:15 to 12:15 on that Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday is our retest day, and we will allow an additional hour for any students that have a longer test time. Here you see the middle school sites and times, and here are the high school sites and time as well. And then, as I mentioned, early college, they will do their own retest on their May dates, and they will each be at their own school, but you see the times as well. Are there any questions?
Ms. Blackwell, I will start with you.
When do they need to sign up for this? When do they need to send in something to decide if they want to sign up for this? Will they receive information if they haven't met the goal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's a great question. So the timeline on this is really, really tough. So for high school, they test the last 5 days So the 4th will be, is the last day of school, I believe. Let me pull up my calendar so I'm not telling you dates that are not correct. The last day of school will be that Thursday, and then Friday is a work day, and then we have to turn around and retest on that Monday. So we will actually notify families. As soon as they test, we get their scores the very next day, and so we notify families. Your child did not pass their test. They have an opportunity to come in and retest. What we did a couple of years ago is we actually kind of projected who was not on track to be proficient, and we notified those families in advance. But of course, sending the message that we fully expect all of our students to be proficient, but if by chance they're not, they were already on our radar. So great question, thank you.
Mr. Walter?
How many students do you anticipate taking advantage, and how many staff do we have that'll be part of this?
Another great question. We're not exactly sure how many students to anticipate at this point. As I mentioned during your retreat last Saturday, we are in the process of doing our mid-year benchmarks, and that information really gives us an idea on how students are doing. But we are planning based on what we had last year. So I don't know that exact number.
Ballpark or?
Oh, I will have to send it to you. Okay. I don't know it off the top of my head.
And for staffing, how do we staff that?
Staffing, we do the same thing. We just ask for those that are interested. When we did this 2 years ago, we didn't have enough staff. We had more students than we had staff that were willing to do it. But we pull from everywhere. So people in the C&I department, EC staff, accountability, everybody just went out.
So it's a last minute type of a thing? It's not something that they sign up ahead of time?
For the staffing?
Uh-huh.
Oh, no, we absolutely have the staffing ahead of time because they have to have their contracts in.
So how many do we anticipate?
I don't know that because the number of staff will depend on the number of students that qualify. So we're in the middle of our mid-year testing right now. So as soon as we have that number, we'll be able to better anticipate how many students that we should have for the program.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm sure you can get that to us in
Yes,
Friday.
I will get it to you.
Great.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Sandage?
I wanted to know how many students as well. Thanks for your question. Thanks for the presentation, by the way. This is very interesting, and the only question I had was if we are considering social workers or counselors.
That's a great question. This is just a really quick program. It's only 3 days. It's 3 half days. So students come in, they grab their snack, they have remediation for a couple of hours, and they go home. So we won't have any social workers or counselors. We really don't have the need. Ms. Sandage, I think that's something that you may be interested in, that we will be hoping to have some counselors and social workers, is a summer jumpstart program that we're hoping to do in July. And I'll be sending some more information to you all about that in the coming weeks.
Last question. So if something happens there, and I guess I'm just thinking, we're talking about this summer, did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so if something happens there, mental health, substance use, any of those kind of criteria that we see a student may need, do we have something in place should that occur?
Well, so the assistant principals are there, the principals are there, we will be fully staffed. We always have immediate contact with social workers, for any emergency that would happen anytime that we have students on campus. So they would be available to us, but we just would not be securing their services for the purpose of this program.
Mr. Furr?
Yeah, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I think during the presentation you said we've added 3 schools?
Yes.
Okay, but you expect the same numbers from last year, so why do we add 3 schools if we expect the same numbers as last year? I mean, to me, I think with the reports we've been getting back about the way some of the students are struggling, I mean, I would anticipate it's going to be more.
Okay, that's a great question. If we can slide back up to, let's see here. It's the slide that lists the assessments. It was number 7. Yep. So when we did this 2 years ago, Mr. Furr, the assessments that we were offering that year were a little bit different because the last time we did this, math was renorming. So all that we were testing was reading. So historically, we do better in math and science than we do in reading. So we've taken that number into account. So that's our ballpark number. I know that you and Mr. Walter also said at the retreat that there's, that you've heard these different things, that's not necessarily 100% accurate. So we have, for sure, numbers of how students did during first semester in EOC testing. And as I mentioned, we're doing our mid-year internal benchmark assessments right now. So we'll have a really good idea of the number of students that we need. But again, because we've only done this program one time, and when we did it that year, we were doing different assessments. This year, we're doing math and science, which traditionally we've done better with. So that's the ballpark number that we're considering. The 3 schools that we added were West Cabarrus, the virtual academy, and Hickory Ridge High School. So all students in our county had the opportunity to participate in the retest. So when I said we've added 3 schools, that's what I was referring to.
Okay, so in the past, what would you guess percentage of students that actually retested? Because I'm sure some of them don't even bother. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is true. Some don't even bother. We like to offer and extend that. We had a tremendous, I'll be able to send it to you as soon as I get back to my seat. It's in here somewhere, and I can send an email and you can report that out, Ms. Grimsley, if you'd like. But I can give you the exact number of students that participated and tested last time. Yes.
Ms. Adcock?
I'd just like to say this is really great. I'm glad that we're doing this, and I think this is going to be very beneficial to our students. And I'm really excited about the Jump Start programs that we talked about at the CNI meeting today and how that's going to help other students as well moving into the new school year. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Carpenter?
I think most of my questions have been asked, but I agree. I think that the Jump Start program we're going to do and this one, given the opportunity for the children that did not do as well, I think both of these will be, good for the child or the children in the district, and so I'm very encouraged with this. So all my questions have been answered.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Hill, that was a great presentation. And board members, those were great questions. So I just want to make sure, are we good for consent, or would you like this on action? Consent? Okay, great.
Consent's good with me.
Okay, great, thank you. So consent it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will move on to 6.02, the audit contract, fiscal year 2021-2022, and we will have Ms. Kelly Klutz back.
Thank you. The board is required to do an external audit each year, and so we are presenting the audit contract for the fiscal year 2021 before you. The document that I provided, so when I am requesting services from someone, there's 2 things that's primarily important to me. Is 1, that we've got a competitive low price, and 2, that we have a service that is great or good. And with Anderson, we're very pleased with the service that they provide, and their price is extremely competitive. So we've given you data from the LGC that tracks all of the audit prices for all governments for 3 years, and then we provided you with the average of those. We've also consolidated that data so that you could see the districts that are the largest 20 districts in the state, so that it's just more relevant to the way that we look. And so based on those data points, that we're getting a very competitive rate and that they've done a great job for us, we would like to recommend that you approve the audit contract for 2021.
Ms. Adcock, I will start with you.
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Farr? Ms. Sandage?
No questions.
Mr. Walter?
How many years have we had this for?
This will be the 5th.
This will be 50, so you'll do an RFP next year?
I'll do an RFP if the board gives me direction to do an RFP, and then they'll also have to let me know what your goal is. So if you're looking for a more competitive price, if you're looking for the lowest price, then I need to know that. If you're just looking to have a different auditor, then that has to be in my scope, and I would put that in my RFP. So if the board would like an RFP, then I'll just need direction for that.
Okay.
But like I said, I've been pleased with their service. I think the board has been, and their price is extremely competitive.
So this list that you sent us for the last 4 years, 2 of those years says fixed, and then the last 2 says variable. What is the difference between those 2?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
One of these reports that you sent to us for Cabarrus County Schools type of audit, I think it had fixed rate on 2 years, and then the last 2 have been variable. What was the change?
Could you show me exactly what you're talking
I'll
about?
pull up one of your,
Which document is it?
the one I had to twist and turn, and it has a list of all the different audits in North Carolina for the last 4 years.
Ms. Grimsley, it may be more appropriate to take that question and me get back next week with the answer.
That's fine.
Mr. Walter, will you just email that to Kelly and
That's
to
okay.
copy me on
It's
it?
right there on the information that was provided to us. Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Ms. Blackwell? Ms. Carpenter?
Well, I know that accounting practices, they always say it's good to change auditors within every 3 to 5 years. So it would be my recommendation that we do put, proposal out maybe next year. I know that you've been very pleased, Kelly, with these auditors, and the only reason that I suggest this is because letting different eyes look at the books. I know that you say, well, when they come in, they know what to look for and everything, and they're very comfortable with us, That's what concerns me. They're very comfortable. And, like I say, I like different eyes looking at things. And I was in accounting for 60 years, and I just am very comfortable to see different eyes looking at different things. And I know you do an excellent job. I'm not questioning that by any stretch of the imagination, but I just like having different people, like I say, normal accounting practices always say change every 3 to 5 years. And I know all my years I always did that. I would change, I may be happy with somebody, but I would usually change every 3 to 5 years. I may go back to the other people in 3 years, but still, I would change just to have that, and I always did that. But I would like to see us put it out maybe next year. But, I think we should put this to a vote. Have it on a vote, though.
So I'm hearing you say action agenda for next week.
Action, yes.
And also, Kelly, I guess we need to look at maybe scheduling this for an RFP for next year. Is there a time frame that we have to allow to the existing company that we would be doing that?
So it sounds like what I've heard is the board is okay adopting the contract this year, but potentially would like to put it out for an RFP next year. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I would, if I get that direction, then we would start that process earlier next year. But I just have to say, for the record, I have never said that I am comfortable with our auditors, and that's why I want them. So I just need for everybody to know and understand that.
So I hear you say you will be prepared for RFP next year, and we're going to put this on the action agenda for next Monday.
Now, I need the board to direct me to do that, and I need the board to let me know if they are telling me that the current auditors may not issue the RFP. They may not respond to the RFP, and so that's what I need to know.
So do you need that this far ahead of time, or we just need to put that in our calendar of board action sometime in the future?
So if I'm going to send it out for an RFP, I'm going to want to do that in December of next year.
December of this year.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we need to put that on a tickler list, if you will, so that you're aware of that, or do we need to remember that as our board calendar?
This is a board decision. If you want
Okay.
an RFP, you need to direct me to do that.
So we need to make sure that in December, we list this for an item of discussion regarding a new RFP for an audit.
Okay.
Okay, great. And then you're going to answer Rob's question when he emails it.
Yes, I will.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. And I think we keep you for 6.03, approval to the purchase of the custodial equipment.
That's correct. So we have requested bids to purchase some custodial equipment that will help keep our schools clean during this time of COVID. Our schools have lacked updating custodial equipment for many, many years. We do not have a recurring funding source for that, so they have been in desperate need. This was a great opportunity to be able to update that equipment with the funds that we've gotten from the state and funds that we've allocated locally. So we've had the bids come in. As you can see, we're recommending that Seven Oaks is the low bid at $423,053.97, and we are recommending that the board approve those bids so we can move on with that, the purchase of that custodial equipment. We also included as an attachment the equipment that we will be purchasing, and that is displayed.
Okay, I'll open that up for questions. Ms. Carpenter, I will start with you.
I think I had my questions answered. I know I received an email and you said that it would be signed after it was approved, because that was my only question. I saw on the document said that the direction should sign next to the winning bid, and you said that would be signed after it's approved. Is that correct?
Yes, that's just an internal document for my backup. It's not a legal document.
So y'all will sign that document after we approve it, correct? Beside that Seven Oaks Supply Company, because the document I have doesn't have any signature on it.
Yes, that's correct. It's just a backup document.
Okay, that was what I had a question about, so, because the one I had didn't have a signature on it, so, yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, Ms.
That
Blackwell?
was my only question.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Ms. Blackwell?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, a couple questions. What do you mean by this item was budgeted? Typically, if something's in an expansion budget, we have a form for that. I don't remember reviewing that, and typically those things go through a TRAGO process. Is that what happened here?
I'm sorry, Mr. Walter. I'm going to ask you to repeat that, please. I just didn't understand.
Okay, here it says this was budgeted, the funds are budgeted. I don't remember going through the budget process and seeing this item as part of the expansion budget or anything like that. Typically, if something goes through a budget item, it's TRAGO'd, or you understand what the TRAGO process, see if that comes to the top of the list or not.
Yeah, so we talked about this on Saturday at our work session, where the state determines how state monies are spent, the federal government determines how the federal government is spent. So we don't bring state monies to you specifically by line item for you to approve. The state allocated over $700,000 for this type of thing and said, thou shalt spend it for this. Therefore, the board, we don't come to the local board for those decisions.
But you're coming to us now for this one.
Because this is over $250,000, there's a board policy that says that a purchase greater than $250,000 needs board approval. The budget is there, it's just the fact that it's a large purchase.
I'm just trying to see where did this rise to the top of needs with those funds? Was there something else that we could have spent those funds on?
It's all personal protective equipment within the guidelines that the state set forth in the policy allotment manual.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Sandage?
Once this is approved, when do we expect to have all of these things here?
Normally, when we purchase this type of things, it's fairly quickly. I could check with Mr. Taylor. He's leading up this purchase. But normally, I would say within 2 weeks would be the norm.
Mr. Furr? Ms. Adcock?
No questions.
So Kelly, just real quick, because I know the general public does not see this, do you have items that we can say, for example, that would be a part of this, just to give them an idea? And I know it's up there, but I don't think they can see it.
Okay,
Is there any
sure.
that you can just run down just to
Yeah.
give them a general idea?
Yeah, so floor scrubbers, carpet spotters, blowers, cleaning, a touch-free cleaning system, propane buffers, ride-on floor scrubbers, vacuum packs, walk-behind carpet extractors. At the bottom, it says there's 346 pieces of equipment that we're able to buy with this bid.
I think it's a good information for the general public to understand this is necessary in order to keep our buildings clean and the things that we have to do now, especially for COVID protocols. I just think that was important. Thank you for doing that. So, board members, hearing no other comments or questions, may I place this on the consent agenda or action?
I'd like to see it on action since it's a big.
Action. Board members, are you okay?
Was this COVID money or was this some other kind of money?
Yes, it's COVID money.
It was COVID money? Okay.
Is that it, Ms. Carpenter?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, board members, now we will move to item number 6.04. This is the change in the agenda, and we will ask for the board chair from the Child Protection and Fatality team, Ms. Paula Yost, to join us. And just while she's coming in, I'll give you a little bit of background on Ms. Yost. She is a native of Concord. She has a BS in microbiology with a minor in chemistry and a BA in English, all from Virginia Tech. She is also an attorney. She has a master's degree in clinical mental health from Lenore University, and also licensed clinical mental health counselor. I hope I covered all of that. And thank you for joining us tonight. I think the majority of the board wanted to hear your report. Both Ms. Sandage and I sat on your board, and at Wednesday's meeting, a lot of good information came out of that, and we felt like it was really important for the general public to hear what came out of that, and especially for the rest of these board members to hear it firsthand. So with that, I will turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Grimsley. Good evening. So as Ms. Grimsley stated, my name is Paula Yost, and I'm the chair of the County Child Protection and Fatality Team.
Ms. Yost, I hate to, but are you keyed up? I just want to make sure. Can you hear her?
It helps if I press the button.
Very good. We just want to make sure you're heard loud and clear.
That's very helpful. So as Ms. Grimsley stated, my name is Paula Yost, and I'm the chair of the County Child Protection and Fatality Team. I've served in that role for the last 7 years, but this is the first time, I've spoken to the board before, but this is the first time you guys have ever asked me to come and speak to you. And so I very much appreciate that, and on behalf of my team, we very much appreciate the invitation. I just want to start by telling you a little bit about our team. So every county in North Carolina is statutorily mandated under North Carolina General Statute 7B 1407 to have a child protection and fatality team. And under that statute, we have very specific positions from various parts of the community. These groups include physicians from Atrium Health, nurses, the Medical Examiner's Office, Cabarrus Health Alliance, the Cabarrus Partnership for Children, the District Attorney's Office, the Department of Human Services, which includes Child Protective Services, Cardinal Innovations, EMS, Law Enforcement, the Department of Juvenile Justice, Cabarrus County Schools and Kannapolis City Schools representatives, and several nonprofit and mental health counseling organizations. And to my team, if I left you out, it was not intentional. Our mission is to formally review the fatality of every child who passes away in Cabarrus County. And we also look at global issues of child protection and how we can best protect children given common trends that we are observing within the county. So we met last Wednesday, and as Ms. Grimsley stated, we had a long meeting. Keisha was in it, or Ms. Sandage was in attendance. And I'm here to share the content of that conversation with you in the most concise manner that I possibly can. I also want to state before I get into this that child protection is a community response. It is not any one person or any one agency's job to protect children. It has to be a partnership where absolutely everyone works to do it. School system employees, prior till now, have always been the #1 reporter of child abuse. Teachers are literally our frontline workers when it comes to protecting children, and they are not right now. At the moment, it is the police and the sheriff. And while I am very thankful for law enforcement, this is deeply concerning. Some of this may be because the teachers are not able to get one-on-one time with children in a classroom face-to-face, so they're not being able to observe things like inappropriate bruises, which would be very helpful. It also may be that the lack of in-person instruction, teachers are not able to gather as much necessary information for the Department of Child Protection Services to screen a report under the law. I'm going to give you some very specific numbers real quick if you'd like to jot them down. Right now, we have 8 families in prevention as opposed to last year's 6. That's typically a very small group of families, but it's definitely something that we have specific money allotted to be able to help families stay out of the foster care system. We currently have 62 families per month in in-home services as opposed to last year's 54. Briefly, in-home services are typically children who we are not seeing as victims of abuse or neglect. These are children that are just living in poverty. So sometimes they're children whose family is living in a minivan or they're living in a tent somewhere. So it's not, you cannot take custody of a child for simply being homeless or for simply not having food in their home or for being a victim of poverty. So that's typically the children that we see in in-home services. Foster care. We, as of right now, have 152 Cabarrus County children in foster care as opposed to last year's 133. And that is with the school system reporting less. Additionally, data on screened-in reports from all reporting agencies are showing a significant reduction in reports over time. This is largely from schools being mostly remote and children not being seen out in the community as a result of the pandemic. We have been concerned that with virtual education, Child Protective Services is not getting the quality of the reports they normally get from teachers because of the change in teaching venue. As a result, we are seeing an increase of screened out reports made to Child Protective Services simply because there is not enough known information to give Child Protective Services a legal right to intervene on behalf of these children. I will say that in Cabarrus, our school social workers have been working really hard to keep up with all of the children who may otherwise be forgotten. Child Protective Services reports to our team that they do have an excellent relationship with the Cabarrus County School social workers. Each school is assigned a child welfare social worker from Cabarrus County to serve as a liaison and to answer any questions of staff in any situation for guidance. Truancy has also become an increasing issue. The schools are finding it difficult to file truancy petitions, and Child Protective Services cannot intervene without the schools doing their diligent efforts first. With the pandemic, identifying and assisting these families has been a difficult task to accomplish. When these reports are called in and screened out by Child Protective Services, these families are often referred to the prevention program that the county has, but that is a voluntary service, and oftentimes families opt out of doing it. Real quick, and I'm saying this more for the general public than I'm saying it for the board. We need the public to report child abuse. If you are concerned that you are seeing child abuse, if you are living in an apartment with neighbors who are engaged in domestic violence, and you know that there are children in that room, please report that to the Department of Human Services. You can do that during normal business hours. The number is 704-920-2277 or to CPS, Child Protective Services. If you need to file a report after 5 p.m. on a weekend or on a holiday, the correct number is 704-920-3000. Again, that number is 704-920-3000. If you are in doubt, please file a report. A lot of times people call me and they say, well, Paula, I think I'm seeing child abuse, but what if I'm wrong? Well, what if you're right? It's not your job to determine whether child abuse is happening or not. It is your job to report it. The entire county, if you are an adult, is a mandatory reporter. So it's very important that if you have any concern about child abuse, that you are reporting it to the Department of Human Services so that they can do their job to protect these children, and the entire community needs to be vigilant about that. Because of everything I just told you all, physical and sexual abuse that we are getting reports of is worse than ever because we are catching it too late. Abuse tends to escalate. So what would have once been just a bruise or some inappropriate bruises is now a broken arm. We are seeing less children at the Children's Advocacy Center located inside the Jeff Gordon's Children's Hospital, but the cases we are seeing, so that's where children go when they've been physically or sexually assaulted. The cases that we are seeing there are more severe. Research shows that after a child reaches 10 years of age, the parent is not the first person the child reports sexual abuse to, and that is for a number of reasons. Children at that age believe that sexual abuse may be their fault, and they want to protect their family members. Teachers, however, are trusted by students, and children have disclosed sexual abuse to teachers for years. However, without the opportunity for a private, face-to-face discussion with their teachers, the CAC is experiencing fewer reports from teachers of sexual abuse. We know that sexual abuse has not stopped during the pandemic. It has just gone unreported. The cases of sex abuse that are coming in are concerning and have multiple victims by the same offender. Shifting gears a little bit. Obesity rates are way up. We are seeing 9-year-olds who are gaining 20 pounds in a year because they are in front of a computer with processed snacks all day. In some cases, they are not able to go outside because they don't live near green space. Elementary school playgrounds do miraculous things for children and their energy levels with obesity prevention. Childhood obesity was a significant problem identified by Healthy Cabarrus before the pandemic ever happened. Children not being in school has put that problem on steroids. Experts advise families to avoid blaming themselves and to look for opportunities to congratulate children for healthy behaviors and for making good decisions. Mental health concerns are also deeply concerning across the county. Thankfully, we have not had a child complete suicide since the pandemic started. However, the rates of depression we are seeing in children is high. We have seen an increase in children cutting, reporting loneliness, and complaining that they don't have any friends. We have to remember that children have immature brains, and they are often not able to understand the impact of social distancing on mental health. Additionally, many of them don't have access to a mental health professional at all right now. When they are in school, they always have access to such a professional. They either have access to the school counselor or the school social worker. These are trained individuals who are capable of recognizing anxiety and depression in children. Throughout the pandemic, there have also been an increase in the numbers of unsupervised juveniles committing offenses across the community. Neighborhood after neighborhood has reported instances of felony car breaking and entering. We are also seeing parents who are dropping their children with Child Protective Services and not taking them back. The department is doing all that they can to prevent that through home and prevention services. Unfortunately, we have heard the word babysitting used to describe our educators. In this context, that is a demeaning term. Educators are not babysitters. A babysitter is also a high school or college student who is paid by parents when they go out to work or on a date. An educator is a necessary individual with a college degree who knows how to teach children and got into education because they enjoy teaching children. Children are also constitutionally entitled to a free, appropriate public education. That is one of their fundamental rights under the United States Constitution. We have built an entire economy around parents being able to work and children being able to go to school. The rising number of summer camps is also directly correlated with the need for parents to be able to go to work. One proposed logical solution made by my team is for our teachers to get vaccinated as quickly as humanly possible. My understanding is that the CDC actually does classify teachers as essential frontline workers. If you go on their website today, and I did it in the hallway before I walked in here, teachers are actually listed under item 1B by the CDC. So item 1A is your frontline workers, like your doctors, your nurses, your hospital employees. But under 1B, it does list educators. It even lists educators above individuals ages 65 to 75. For some reason that I do not understand, North Carolina appears to have deviated from the CDC guidelines when it comes to the vaccination of teachers. That appears to have occurred sometime on or before January the 14th, 2021. I have been on the phone with every elected official I can find for a solid week, begging them to get the governor to approve our teachers for vaccinations. Additionally, during our meeting, the Cabarrus Health Alliance shared with our team how critical it is for our teachers to get on the waiting list that the county has for the vaccine. At this time, because of the way North Carolina has structured this, teachers under 50 have not been approved for the vaccine, but they are able to get on the waiting list. So what we are told is that each time there's a vaccination clinic, the CHA has to prepare a certain number of shots and vaccinations to administer that day. If they don't put those shots in a human being's arm, they lose them, and we cannot lose the vaccines. So if individuals no-show or cancel on an appointment, the CHA will call people off of that waiting list. You just have to be able to get to the arena within 30 minutes of a waiting list call, and you get a shot. It does not matter how old you are. It does not matter if you have a pre-existing condition. You can be a healthy 22-year-old, and if you're on that waiting list and they have a shot and they call you and you can get to the arena in time, you will get that shot. The entire county bar was told about this 2 weeks ago by Judge McGee. He told us that if we get a call from CHA, the entire court system is in agreement that lawyers can go down there and get a shot. I would encourage the exact same model for Cabarrus County Schools. The teachers all need to be on the list to get the shot if they want the shot. At this time, I am also hopeful that teachers will be approved for a vaccination soon, and I'm hoping that soon means as early as this week. I think this is critical. This needs to be a legislative advocacy piece at this point because these children are suffering, and we need to do all that we can to fix it. The issues that I just addressed are issues that require attention now from the entire community. And in making your decisions about children, you need to have all of the facts, and these are some of those facts. It's my job as chair of the Child Protection Team to speak to those facts and to be a voice for the needs of Cabarrus County's children. I think that's all I have, and I understand that that content was heavy, but that's also what my role is. If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to do the best that I can to answer them before I leave. If you ask me something that I do not know the answer to, I will defer to a member of my team and get you an answer tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much. I will open it up, and I will start with Ms. Sandage, since she actually is one of our liaison and attended that meeting on Wednesday.
Well, I'm a little at loss for words here. Thanks for that presentation. On Wednesday, when I attended the meeting virtually, I was almost in tears to hear those numbers of children who are being affected in our community and the rise in them. And I did ask you to present those numbers and that our community needed to hear that. I don't have a question per se, but I do just want to say something to our public. You know, I've said this in the beginning. I think that it's unfair for our children to, in my opinion, be penalized because of the decisions that the adults are making. So I urge you, parents, teachers, staff, just everybody in our community, you know, listen to what is happening as a result of our schools being closed and do something different. Be encouraged to do something different.
Thank you. Mr. Furr.
You know, just like Ms. Sandy said, you know, these numbers are eye-opening. You know, it's you know, it touches your heartstrings, of course, and and I appreciate her coming, putting her time in this. She's a tremendous advocate for kids in the county, and we need a whole lot more people like her. And this just, to me, it verifies my beliefs, and I totally appreciate it.
Ms. Adcock?
Yes, I'll just say too that this information is vitally important to our community. We have to look at all sides of things, and to bring this forward and to have the factual information has been very helpful. It helps us to see the real environment in which our kids are having to live. So thank you very much for this.
Ms. Blackwell?
So I just want to say again also thank you for what you do. I am so grateful for you to come and bring this to the board and also to the public. This is something that I have talked about for months and months now, with the increased numbers of children with mental anxiety, depression. You know, we haven't had any real tangible information, but to me it just seems logical. If the schools are not open, then there are kids out there that are having these issues go unreported. And so as sad as all of this information is to hear, it absolutely breaks my heart. This just completely solidifies to me why it is absolutely vital that we make sure that we get these schools open as safely and as soon as possible. So thank you, Paula, for coming. I appreciate it.
Mr. Walter?
A lot of information you shared with us. Is there data that you can also provide to us in email or something? There's just a lot of stuff to process.
Sure.
Like maybe a comparison from this year to last year, like you were talking about.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes, I appreciate the information, and there are people that are working also. You have the people that are working. You have got juvenile justice crime prevention councils. There are people that are working with those agencies also. We have a lot of different people that are working within that group with different people. And this is nothing new. These things have been going on for a long time. This is, I mean, we've got the homeless, our homeless situation with those children. We've seen the McKinney-Vento children that's been there. We've seen those numbers for years. This is nothing new. How many numbers have we seen of that? And so this is nothing new that's just popped up suddenly. How many of those did we have last year? Over 300 and something? And so this is nothing that's just happened recently. You know, the juvenile justice, all the things that we do, we've got all kinds of programs that we're offering. And so this is something that's just not happened this year. And so this is nothing that's just happened. And one of the things that, Holly, we just talked about today, about having the Health Alliance come to our meeting next week, and you agreed to do that. Is that not correct? To have them speak?
Absolutely. And I think I need to make a statement that you're right. This is not new. I think we need to see a status of what it looks like now after this time frame. And I think that's the same with the Health Alliance. That information would not be new either, but it would be updated information because of what they're dealing with COVID. So I think that's very important that statement that you're making, and that there are other organizations out there that we work with and partner with that address some of these similar issues. So you're right, that is available, but I think what the takeaway is that we look at what those repercussions are looking like now with what these organizations are dealing with today. But yes, absolutely, we will be.
And I appreciate so much because when I was on the health board or Health Alliance, I was on that for 18 years, and I worked a lot with the group that you're referring to. And, I mean, it's heartbreaking because we see this every year. And unfortunately, during that time, we had some fatalities. And it's very heartbreaking to see this type of stuff happen. And I know that the schools are the front lines, but again, as she mentioned, the community, it's very important that we all open our eyes and we all look, and when we see something, even if we're not sure, we need to speak up. But this is on every front, to speak up and say something and get it checked out. Whether we, it may not be anything, but see something, say something. That is what we all should be doing. If it isn't anything, then fine. But if you have a doubt whatsoever, say something. And especially when it comes to a child. And she was absolutely right with that. But we've got to be very careful and do this slowly, because the safety of the whole community is at hand with this. But when it comes to a child's well-being, but the community as a whole, we've got to make sure that we are doing it right, because if you do something, it can be dangerous on both sides. But thank you so much, Paula, for the information. We do appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter, and I think, Ms. Yost, I think to me, the message is, yes, the school system has always been pretty much the front line for the resource for identifying these problems, and when they're not there, you have to find a backup resource. So we need to get out to the general community that, those eyes and ears are not there as prevalent as they were in the school system, so we need to get that out to if you see it, say it, and some people don't know who to call, so I appreciate you identifying those numbers. Do you have any further comments or last-minute comments?
I think the only other two things I would say, I forgot to mention, we actually do not know the impact of teenage pregnancy at this point. That is something my team is concerned about, but obviously it takes 9 months to complete a pregnancy, so we don't have updated numbers on that. What we do know is that the last 2 years, last year Cabarrus County had 40 children born to a teenage mother. The year before that they had 42. And so we are interested to see if in 2021 those numbers increase. We are expecting them to, but we don't have hard data on that at this time, so we are watching that. The only other thing I would just say is just thank you again for the invitation, and also thank you to our teachers who are aware of these issues and who are monitoring them and who are still doing the best that they can to call in a report. If there's anything we can do to support you, I certainly will do that, as will, I'm sure, the entire Department of Child Protective Services.
I think they will be very appreciative to hear that they were recognized of the job that they did, in addition to them being educators in the room, but how they impacted children's lives and their safety at home, and also that they probably are trying to still figure out what that looks like doing it remotely, looking at that child across a screen versus having them in their actual classroom. So thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you all.
I have
Ms.
one more
Sandage,
question.
did you have something else?
I do. Did I hear numbers? So when I was on the phone, I heard that, maybe like last year, we would have had 40 reports from our teachers or from our staff, and then this year we might have had 2. Did I hear you say that?
Yeah.
I know those are not the right numbers, but if you can kind of help us to grasp how, how Ms. Carroll and Ms. Carpenter are saying this is not new. This is new. We have dropped significantly in numbers and increased in numbers in some places. And in that conversation on the phone, I heard that you guys felt like, the professionals felt like, that was directly related to schools being not closed. I want to make sure I got a little good wordplay here. The children not being in the buildings as much.
That is correct.
Okay.
So, for example, in previous years, and I do have these numbers that I can send you, in previous years for screened-in reports, if we looked at April, May of 2020, we had really high numbers. Even though the kids weren't in school, the teachers still knew the kids, and the school system really knew who the kids were. The summer months, things dropped off dramatically. That's also normal. But then when we got into August, September, October, November, and December, the reporting numbers coming out of Cabarrus County schools for screened-in reports were almost half what they have been in the past. So we do think that is a direct ramification, because if you think about it, if you're with a kid in a normal world, which is how 2020 started. So if you were in a child that was with the normal world and you knew that kid really well, you knew all the kids that you had, then you went into crisis schooling in plan for lack, well, I guess it wasn't Plan C at that point. We hadn't come up with these terms yet. But if you went into crisis schooling, you still knew your kids because you knew the kids because you'd had them all year. So this year it's a little bit different because the teachers haven't had as much of those opportunities to really get to know their allotment of students face to face because they're not in the building. That doesn't mean, that's not to say anything negative. It doesn't mean they're not trying. It's not meaning they're not doing their best. But you can't see children with whelps all up and down their back if they're not in your class. You can't tell if a child's wincing in pain because they got beaten up last night if they're not in your class. And they can hide a lot of stuff like that behind the camera with turning it off.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Sandage, for that clarification. And thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your being here.
Sure, thank you.
So now, board members, we will move to what's our new 6.05, the approval of the task force recommendations, and we will have Deputy Superintendent Brian Schultz join us. And board members, I think you have a hard copy at your seat.
Good evening, Chairperson Grimsley and members of the board. Dr. Louder, thank you for allowing me to present about the task force again. What I'd like to do is just really kind of run through a second iteration of the PowerPoint we looked at on Saturday and kind of run through that fairly quickly to get to any items that you have. So the slide that you see in front of you is really just a screenshot of the title page of the pre-publication draft. So you can see that it's really been Ms. Boone and her communications team have really doctored it up in terms of making it publication ready. So it looks much more fancy, I would say. And then the table of contents, you see what is embedded within that. So you've all been provided either electronic or paper copies that you now have. And again, just a big thanks to Ms. Boone and her team and Ms. Mull, who put together the first draft of this as well. So with that, yep, go ahead. Just a reminder, go ahead and click through those. Just a reminder of the action teams, the decision-making metrics. Keep going real quickly. Student groupings, internal supervision and coverage, and the transition considerations group. So those are all reported out in this document. And then the next slide is just an acknowledgement of the team membership that we had that worked on each of those subgroups and the great service that they did throughout that. And then next slide, if you'll just look through, go all the way through those transitions if you don't mind, and go one more, please. And just added the date for, we met again on Friday, and then obviously tonight to discuss this. So that just made the timeline a little bit longer to get to this completion, and again, just representing really what the task force did in terms of putting in time, again, meeting as late as last Friday at noon. And we had a task force, communicating back and forth today as well, so stay tuned. The next slide is just acknowledging all the sources that were drawn upon, as well as the community knowledge that we have. And then we'll get into the specific work groups. So the metrics group, so we made some adjustments, and I'll say that this one is, I think I said it before, it's probably the most complex. So we've made some adjustments to that, and we'll take a look at those in a second. But just removed a metric, and then revised some metric 9 and 10 on the previous version. These metrics also provide you with a range of options, including not just a static number to make one decision on, a number of metrics that are ranges of statistics, as well as range of plan options under each area, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. And then it gives the superintendent the authority to assign if an individual school has a cluster or has an outbreak, then we'd obviously want to give the superintendent the quick authority to assign that school to a Plan C scenario. This is just another screenshot of what some of the metrics look like. I won't go through them each individually, but we do, look at the number of cases over time, things like percent positive in the community, hospitalizations, weekly cases in our relevant age group, that 5 to 17. I know when I report the data out to you all, we look, there's a piece of that that's pulled out. I think Ms. Adcock actually said, hey, we'd like to see that, and I kind of teased it out a little bit further and working with the Health Alliance that shows school-age children. So that's a really important piece when looking at the data, and also the number of cases in ages of 25 to 64. And Larry, if you don't mind going to the next slide. And then the remaining indicators are evidence of transmission within the building, schools, number of schools on Plan C. We don't have any of those right now. And then the level of concern. And this was something I think Ms. Carpenter brought this up, like wanting to know like the specific number of quarantines in some departments. And we have, obviously in order to get kids to school, transportation is an essential department. So knowing the number of quarantines in transportation is probably an important thing when making some decisions. And then also things like school nutrition and whether we can deliver food to students during the day is super important. So meeting those basic human needs, and then as well as covering the staff at school. So that's really what metric 10, we kind of expanded that one a little bit to be a little more detailed. And then kind of group that as low, medium, and high because there are other reasons that people are out other than quarantine. And those have to be factored into that situation. So it's not always just quarantine, maybe just a lot of people sick or some people out for leave or other various reasons. So that has to be factored into the equation as well. All right? And then go ahead and click all those in too, Larry. The transition considerations that we went through before, so some key words there, the shift sequentially, reduce transitions, allow 2 to 4 weeks in between, trust the professionals, and then allow plan choice options, and then consider the capacity for staff. Next slide. Go ahead and bring those in too, Larry. Thank you. And then the recommendations from student groupings. So we've been through those, but it really goes in about to recommend bringing K-3 back and then 4-5, and then also looking at some certain shifts for middle school and high school. So, if we have the ability to bring back middle school, allow that to happen just to make sure that we have the capacity from a transportation side of things and a school feeding side of things, and then bring high school in shortly thereafter. And then the internal supervision and coverage, that's from really from the transportation, looking at how they're hiring and retaining workers, and looking at the classroom supervision and coverage, and that was the sharing of best practices among schools and how they utilize space, how they cover classrooms, and really about the flexible staffing, flexible use of space, and flexible scheduling. And then lastly, the substitute changes that were updated in order to open the net, so to speak, for the requirements, and then but also still maintain safety at the same time, and then allowing each school to hire one short-term daily substitute for the remainder of this year. So with that, I know that was super fast, so if we need to go back and go dig into anything in particular, but I wanted to get to you and get to your comments and your questions that you have regarding the task force and the recommendations that they made. And then just once again, just a lot of props to all the people that put in a lot of time into making this a document full of, I think, useful recommendations to the board.
So I'm going to start this discussion with the board members that actually were the liaisons, and I'll begin with Ms. Adcock.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian, and for just the awesome work that everybody did on this. There's a lot of thought went into this, a lot of detailed work, and it's really great to see the final product, so thank you. A couple of things that I would just like to ask that could be added would, especially on background information and sources considered, is that the CDC has a new reopening guidelines that came out in January of 2021 that I would like to see if the board approves to be added to that. It really has a lot of additional information that has been gathered together over the last 6 months, and a lot of information about social distancing. Also, I would like for us...
Ms. Adcock, I hate to interrupt you, but could you tell me where you're at? I want to make sure I keep a note of that. Just for
background information is where it's like maybe the second page, third page.
So just regarding the background information?
It's page 5.
Okay.
So add addition to add the new CDC guidelines that came out in January 2021.
Okay.
A lot more information. They've actually been able to do a lot more research, so that would just be a great tool as well. And then just the ability, how are we going to update this? And an example of that would be when the governor, makes an order that he is going to include middle school and high school in Plan A. Will any of this change? It looks like to me that would be something that could happen. What will we do as far as making updates on that? And I was looking at the decision tree, and that's something I think we as a board really need to discuss, is this decision tree, to see how this works, because to me it's a little bit complicated with, if you have 5 green, 3 blue, 2 yellow, that's on page 8. And then what plans you consider. I think it's just important for us as a board to understand what that means. I know that's a lot of detailed information, but I think we need to understand, because we as a board are going to have to know how the school system is going to operate in those different circumstances. And then another question I have, and again, this is just I don't know the information about this, is on page 9 at the bottom, allow plan choice options, where it says that moving from plan C to A or B, those students will have to wait until the end of the 9 weeks. Just kind of thinking about, is that going to be a fair thing for our students if a school closes because, for a certain amount of time, and then they're going to have to wait 9 weeks before we open that school back up? I mean, again, I'm not really sure if that's only talking about teachers, is it talking about students or schools or the system? That was just a clarification on that.
If I may, I'll just comment on a couple of those things. So I'm glad to include whatever sources that the team used. So we're really trying to just capture what the team used and put in there. If the CDC, if that document was utilized for any of the teams, we'll be glad to put it in there, because I kind of wondered in putting that together, was this all the sources that we used? And of course, we could probably pull research from 1,000 sources too. So I know that, and I'll just say from a decision-making point of view, nothing wrong with the CDC, but I think that we are going to take our guidance from, ultimately we're going to take our guidance from NCDHHS, which is where CHA draws their guidance from, and then that's our local guidance. So, and it's really, I mean, it's not worth probably debating too long, but that's just kind of the chain of how it comes down from the CDC to the states and then to the local. So I'm fine with that either way of including that. We can certainly include that as a resource that has a lot of valuable insights in it for sure. And then I would say in terms of how updating, I think that will depend on what it is, and then what I've envisioned seeing is pulling the specific work group that change would fall into, and in some cases it could impact 2 work groups. In that case, I'd pull them together, and then probably do some sort of team update. So if one group makes a change, then I'd still want to communicate out that to the entire task force. So I'd see some sort of methodology, either a recorded something, a brief meeting, an overview, an information session, something like that where we'd update the whole team. But pull that specific task group together, make the change, and then do some sort of reporting out, to the team, the whole team. And then in terms of the metrics, I think page 8, I do think that's a really important point, Ms. Adcock, and I do think that's something that the board needs to spend some time discussing. And these are obviously recommendations. Recommendations are not requirements and they're not mandates. But it's the best thinking of a group of people that really did some great work together. So I do think that that's something that probably needs to be discussed further. And then as far as the plan choice option, I think on page 9, so what we did first semester, if a student opted to go from plan B to plan C, or they started out in virtual. So then they had to wait until the semester to convert back to plan B.
Okay.
Right? So they couldn't. What we didn't want to happen was this movement back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So it can be difficult to keep track of that. For stability purposes, we said that. So for second semester, we did that survey, and students that were in C could come back into B and or soon to be A. This is recommending allowing students, actually increasing the frequency that they could go from virtual at the 9-week point, which is a little bit quicker than the semester. But anytime a student that's in A or B could go to virtual. So it's kind of an anytime to virtual, but if you are virtual, then it's recommending to come back at a natural breaking point at a 9 weeks in the school year. So that's the recommendation. It doesn't necessarily impact, that doesn't pertain to teachers. And if we close the school, it'd typically be closed for like 14 days, which is the typical quarantine time in order to run through the incubation cycle. But again, in all of those cases, we rely on the advice of the Health Alliance on that.
And just a clarification too, let's say we have a classroom within a school that is closed from A to C. Would that classroom have to reopen back in B before it could go back to A if the whole school is in A?
No, we've already had to do that.
Okay.
So no, they come back right away. So if it's a particular classroom, they would come back right away in that, whatever the face-to-face option is at that point.
And then just the last comment that I have is about 13, and this was one of the groups that I was on, which was supervision and coverage recommendations. It does say that pre-K and elementary, that they're going to use the flexible use of space, combining classrooms, larger school space, whether it's the cafeteria, media center, to limit the number of staff needed to supervise uncovered classes. And then I would guess that would be also for social distancing. I just wanted to bring up a concern that I have is there are a lot of letters going out to parents that are saying that we cannot social distance K through 3, and I have not heard that. Like, that has not been something that was brought to the board, but we are hearing that parents are getting letters from teachers that saying that we cannot social distance K through 3.
So is that a question, or you want me to respond to that? Okay. So I don't know about letters. That's not something that that anybody's been charged with doing, to my knowledge. We did notify on the survey that we may not be able to maintain social distancing. I know, and Dr. Helm, I'll look at you because it probably, were there district-wide letters that indicated that? I don't know if they can hear you from that microphone. You may have to come up here.
Thank you for that question. We are not aware that any of those letters have gone out to parents. What we have communicated to parents is that a letter will go out by February 10th that will be very detailed to parents, letting them know the number of students that will be in the class. And of course, that's based on the commitment forms that were due last night at 11:59. Again, that letter will include the number of students in the class, the range of social distancing that will be provided for their child, the personnel who will be included in teaching their child, and then also if there's had to been a change in their learning environment. So as you mentioned, they may be moved from one place to another. One thing that we directed all of our principals to do is by next Monday, all principals, K-3, but even 12, because we're inviting other students back, are to immediately contact their level director and myself if they have any concerns with social distancing. So as of tonight, not one principal has contacted me about social distancing. So again, those were all due last night. Today, they were following up, trying to wrap up those numbers. They're making individual calls to all families of students who are identified as EC, ELL, Section 504 with the written education plan, and McKinney-Vento. They're wrapping that up today. And again, they are to contact their level director and myself by next Monday if there are any issues with social distancing.
So, Dr. Hill, I'm just going to keep you for just a moment, not to put you on the spot, but I think, truly, I think a lot of that, I feel, miscommunication happened because of conversation that happened at our retreat when we were discussing what would happen. You know, it was before the board actually made the decision to bring back K-3 because Dr. Louder felt that that was more doable than bringing back all of K-5. You know, so that discussion was taking place about Plan A and what that would look like. And as everyone knows, we've actually had the authority to bring back K-5 in Plan A by the governor since October. We've never been in Plan A, you know, so in having that discussion and saying, okay, what would that look like? You know, we heard Dr. Louder say, you know, doable is K-3. Fourth and fifth becomes harder because of the classroom sizes, and that's why the recommendation was made to bring K-3 back slower and to figure out what that looked like versus social distancing, how that looks in the classroom, transportation, you know, all those factors that were put in place. But the conversation being put out there that we were coming back into Plan A and the social distancing might be a problem at some of the higher levels, the fourth and fifth grade, I think got convoluted into the decision that we actually made.
Yeah, that's quite possible, and I think, of course, that's the danger in all of this, right? So I think a lot of times social media has come the answer of what's the definitive answer, and so we've worked really hard along with the board to try to help control that message. And so last Saturday was, you know, board meeting number 4 for the month of January, so there's been lots of conversations back and forth. One of the things that we've always said is that we don't know what social distancing will look like until we know which students are actually coming. We can guess, we can assume if you kind of do the math with K-3 because of K-3 class size, and you figure based on the survey that you all sent out, about 60% said they would come back. So big picture speaking, is it doable? Yeah, if you have on average 20 kids in a class and 60% of those kids come back, could you social distance? Probably doable, but class by class by class, there's no way that anybody in this room can sit and say, could they social distance, yes or no, because you would have to know the exact square footage of every classroom and the number of students. So one of the things that I did in the commitment form that we sent out is I did a video because we wanted to control that message. And so it was a message on behalf of the district from me explaining exactly what would happen. And then also Ms. Reeves, our elementary director, shared a video with that same message, a little bit more detailed about exactly what would happen. And that went to all of our elementary schools.
And I think that was really helpful, and I'm not sure how many people know that's actually out there, and it might be good for that to be
It's
stated.
actually embedded in the commitment form. So when
That
they
is
click on
perfect.
on the form, it popped up.
Right. So, I know, and of course, we know what took place in the parking lot this evening, and, there's a lot of emotion wrapped around this decision, but I think there's a lot of miscommunication of what actually took place. I think most people thought we were bringing back K-5 February the 16th, and they weren't hearing that date, that no, that's not what took place. We brought back K-3 so that Dr. Louder and your team would be able to take a look at that at a slow picture to see what K-3 looks like, because they are so much smaller classroom sizes, and then give you that additional 4 weeks, March 15th, to bring back 4th and 5th. We think that was a very smart move on our part. It really did what the task force was going to recommend. We are in on those conversations, being board members that are part of that. We understood that. We thought it was very smart. But I think, not that it's anyone's fault, but it's just what people want to hear. They want to hear what is going on. And there's a lot of information when board members are speaking this at board meetings. But at the end of the day, people need to understand, what did we actually do? What we actually did was bring K-3 back February the 16th, give you the appropriate time to look at that and see how that's working. And you're right, you do not know until the day they all show up. Some say they're coming and they don't, and vice versa. But then to bring back 4th and 5th slower, that's 4 additional weeks to get ready for 4th and 5th, to see what those look like as well. Be prepared for best. But, we felt like we did exactly what we were asked to do, and it's to do that in a slow manner so that we could adhere, or, make sure that we were adhering to social distancing. But to me, I think for it to be put out there, whomever did it, to say that it was absolutely not doable is a false statement, because we do not know that yet. We've not gotten there yet. We've talked about the statistics, which we'll talk about metrics. Tonight, and I want the board to look at this really closely tonight and decide for our next board meeting what action we need to take, if there's anything we need to change, modify, tweak, just what this board's willing to adopt. But the only metric, if you will, that we have not adhered to, and because we cannot, is because they were stating that we made a decision ahead of the time at one of the worst times when the numbers look the worst. Well, implementing Plan A does not start until February the 16th. So we are not at that time frame that metric will still be in place. We've just stated earlier today that statistic of positivity was at 18.4, dropped to 16.2, down to 13, to 12, and possibly now to 11.2. We've still got a couple of weeks until we arrive at February the 16th for Plan A implementation. So I think everybody needs to really step back, take a look at what's going on. We will reevaluate. We have another board meeting, and I spoke on behalf of the board today to say, of course, when we get a little closer, if that number looks not as good as it is now, that it's trending downward, the board always has the ability to, do something different. But at this point in time, I think it's really important that we really get that out to the community, that you hear, we did exactly what the task force is asking us, that we move slowly. We went from C to B to A. We've given you almost a month from January the 19th to February the 16th to just bring back K-3. Another 4 additional weeks to bring back 4th and 5th, if that looks like that's still doable. But the board is always willing, and of course, to make sure that we're looking at the situation, what's going on in the community at that time, and if we need to do any modifications. So I just want to make sure that goes on record. And I appreciate what y'all did with the videos, because I think that's very important.
Yeah, let me just say, I appreciate Dr. Hill and her directors working on communicating that, because, as you've said, communicating with thousands of people is very difficult. But the main thing, that the takeaway, I think, for people is, as far as the difference of what you're speaking of, is class size, the law for class size. So for pre-K, K through 3, the class size, there are limits that are very small for K through 3. Because of that, we feel good about most of the classes in K3. But on Saturday, at the mid-year meeting, the retreat, when Mr. Schultz talked, he said we will have pockets that will not be able to meet those criteria. There will be places where social distancing will not be ideal. And the example that we usually use is in our immersion classes, where those class limits, where the class limit may be 16 students in a first grade class, but a first grade immersion class, the limit is 25. So big difference for there when you can have 25 kids in a class versus 16 kids in a class. So for sure, there will be some challenges in those areas. We also have, as I've given an example, some elementary schools where 90% of the kids, 88% of the kids are coming to school every day or every other day in B, and we have other elementary schools where 50% of the kids are coming every day. We obviously will have pockets in the 88% schools that will be more challenging than the schools that are 44%. But the thing that we tried to emphasize is that 4th and 5th grade, there are no class size limits in 4th and 5th grade. So a 5th grade class with 30 students in it is a significantly bigger challenge than a first grade class with 16 kids in it. So I completely agree that the challenge of doing K through 3 will be in pockets. We feel like the majority of classes will be able to social distance the way we have. When we get to 4th and 5th grade, that's not true anymore. And so what we tried to get the board to see, and again, I think the board did, was 4th and 5th grade is going to be a significantly bigger challenge. So we need to see what are the challenges in these places where we just have small pockets before bringing 4th and 5th grade back in, where you will have full classrooms if all 30 students come to school. And so, as Dr. Hill said, we won't know, the school cannot communicate to people, well, our first grade class is going to have 16 or it's going to have 12. Whichever one of those it may end up being, we'll know whenever we have school and when we do the survey. So the big difference is the law that says K through 3, it looks like this. 4 through 12, it looks very different. And so social distancing in 4 through 12 will always be a significantly bigger challenge depending on how many students come to school. So we certainly appreciate, and I know the schools appreciate, the ability to look at those pockets before we have every classroom where it's in a challenging situation. So I don't think that the public always knows that there's a difference in the law between class size. So that really is what binds everything going forward on this. And as you stated before, we haven't ever done A before, so we really need to see what issues we have in A, especially in pockets where social distance is more of a challenge, before we bring in very large classes across the district where it's definitely going to be a challenge as soon as we open up the classroom.
And I agree with you, and I just actually want to make sure that we make a statement that, and I really wasn't going to say this tonight, but because I feel like it's worthy of saying, and I won't push you on the spot for it, but I know we're hearing that the legislatures may be putting a bill in place that's going to bring kids back, period. We don't know what that looks like right now. It may just be middle school, it may be middle school and high school. But if there's something that a law is getting ready to come down that says we have to put kids back in school, that is going to look differently for us. We are really going to have to be prepared. That plan of action now becomes something that we have to do, not something that we're trying to do. So, I'm not sure when that actually will come down to us and what that looks like and when we'll receive that. But if that's even on the table up there and we need to be looking at that, we need to be ahead of this. And I am so thankful that we've had this task force to get us going in the right directions, because we will not have a choice at that point in time. It will be mandated, and we will really have to start working on that in a much, much different manner. So, Brian, I will let you have it again.
I just want to speak to that
Absolutely.
law, because we have heard some rumors too. Our understanding is that the Senate may introduce a bill tomorrow which would mandate some face-to-face classes. We don't know the details of that yet. We don't know if that is elementary, middle, and high. Obviously, that's one chamber of the legislature, so the Senate is where it's supposed to originate. We don't know what the House will do with that. We don't know what the governor would do with that. But because we have heard that rumor, certainly I think something that was alluded to earlier, is that I believe if that law comes out, or even the possibility of that law, that this board, and I certainly have already done that, I think I copied you on that, to say that we're going to say to our legislatures, if we are going to require teachers to be face-to-face K-12, then teachers need to be put at the front of the line for being vaccinated whenever that law comes down. So I have communicated that to our legislators. It's certainly something I would encourage our board to do with our legislators, and I think it was mentioned earlier that if that is law, then the second part of that law needs to be, then teachers need to be put at the front of the line so we can make sure that they're vaccinated when this law may go into place.
Thank you. Ms. Sanders?
I've been itching to talk over here. So I truly want us to get away from this breakdown in communication. I have heard that we can socially distance our kids, that we can't socially distance our kid. It's going to be an issue possibly in these pockets. What I need to understand is we already know these things are possible. So because we know these things are possible, what are we doing if this pocket over here has 1,000 kids that comes to class? What are we doing about that is my question. And I don't want us to sit here and keep on discussing the same thing. And like, we're the ones that's getting blamed for putting kids in schools and we can't social distance and we're breaking the law. So what I want to hear is, because we know that's possible, what are our options if that happens? Again, if 1,000 kids come to school on the 16th in one class, what are we doing? What are we going to put in place?
And I can speak that our principals are working on that day and night in their schools. And as you guys, when you looked at the capital plan earlier, the reality of that is that if a school was built in 2020, then it's a different answer than if a school was built in 1920. And so the size of the classroom matters, the size of the classroom, the building matters on how they're going to work for that. So to some degree, it is an individual school situation that as soon as the principals have that data, they have been working with I think Mr. Schultz mentioned last Saturday, they've been working on that since the board started mentioning A, but it's not exactly the same plan from building to building or class to class. So what will happen is the principals will make that work as soon as they have the data to do it, and they're working on that all the time and doing a great job with that. But it will look different sometimes depending on the size of the building, the size of the classroom, the age of the building, and the age of the students that are in that class. That's something that, as the principal of the building, they're expected to know, they do know, and they'll have a great plan for that, but it may vary a little bit. They'll have to communicate that depending on their building.
So that to me sounds like we will be able to socially distance our students. I don't know if that sounds differently to somebody else, because we're saying that when we identify those problems, we're going to create a solution to fix that so that they are socially distanced. Please help me.
No, if there's a classroom that has 30 students in it, and all 30 students of those that come to school, they will not be 6 feet apart. So what the school may say is, parents, I want you to understand the students in this classroom are only going to be socially distanced 3 feet apart. And for some parents, that will be, okay, I'm all right with that. And for other parents, it'll be, well, then I'm going to go to Plan C. But again, that will depend on classroom, how many students come back in that school. All of that will determine. And again, some of them will be able to say, you know what, in this classroom, everybody's going to still be more than 6 feet apart. But in the classroom next door, they may be able to say, in this classroom, they're only going to be able to be 5 feet apart. And so our schools are going to communicate that as best they can to the parents so the parents can make a decision, but they won't know that until they understand, okay, all 17 are coming back. What's that going to look like?
But I think, Ms. Sanders, you said we were breaking the law. We're not breaking the law, right? If they're 3 feet, we're not breaking the law. I mean,
I think we need to clarify those are recommendations.
Right, the recommendations, we would prefer 6 feet, but if it can't be 6 feet, then it's going to be 3 feet or 2.5. But we're not breaking a law. We're just doing what's not recommended. So is Union County, Stanley County, Rowan County, whomever that's in A. They're not 6 feet apart in some classrooms, just like we won't be. But when we can, and they're going to do the best they can to make that happen, and that's what we got to trust, or that's what I got to trust.
Yeah, so the North Carolina Department of Instruction has a document called Lighting the Way Forward, and it is a 163-page document. And on page 81, I believe, it spells out what the requirements are for Plan A, what they are for Plan B, and what they are for Plan C. And it goes into great detail. I mean, it's kind of what I mentioned with Ms. Adcock when you talked about the CDC. So our state has gone into great detail to define what is and what is not based on recommendations and working with CDC, DHHS, all of those entities. And under Plan A, it does not mention 6 feet. So yes, you are correct. In Plan B, it does mention 6 feet. So there's a difference there. But we also know what all the other recommendations are in terms of ideal. So yeah, it's not breaking the law, and it is not part of that Plan A delineated by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Also goes further that in Plan A, it talks about cafeteria service. Students are not supposed to be using the cafeteria in Plan A. So it really, you know, if you have a question, I can probably find you the answer in that document, and I'll send you a link and a page number.
So Brian, I'm just going to, and Ms. Angela, I know you're not done. I just want to make sure, just as we go through this. So I know that the task force used a lot of information, you know, to gather statistics and requirements and laws. One of the things I'm going to ask for tonight is I would like to see us have, you know, because we've been told that teachers aren't feeling safe, that they don't have the appropriate PPE, they don't have the real PPE, they don't have enough PPE. We want answers for that. You know, I don't know if the task force addressed that. I wasn't able to find any of that anywhere, but we want answers for that. We want to know what that means. That no longer can go unanswered. I don't know who answers that totally and completely, but I want that answer next Monday night. I want to know what they are told, because we were told that that was a state-provided material. If it's not sufficient, we need to know that. I want to know what teachers feel like if they are not given that they need, that we're not doing correctly. I want to know that. I want to know if it meets state guidelines or if it's something that they just feel like it's not quite sufficient for themselves. There's a lot, and I feel like I speak for this board on every bit of that. I don't know if the task force addressed that in any of these subgroups, but if not, I think that needs to be a part of it, and that was just going to be one of my pieces. The other piece is, you know, they have stated that vaccinations, and not that there is not one of us in here that doesn't agree with that. We have advocated for vaccinations to be pushed. That is not a decision that we can make, or it would have been made yesterday. We think it's just as important. That is a state decision. The Health Alliance has went on record that they're not able to do anything differently with that decision either, but we are all pushing for teachers to be vaccinated immediately. We've been doing that. We probably should have done it a little sooner. You know, you're sometimes thinking that people are going to do the right things for the right reasons when they hear, you know, that it's a priority. But we probably should have been doing that a little quicker. But at the end of the day, I want to know what this situation is, that there's posters out in the parking lot that states that they don't have the correct PPE. That is a liability for us. We are supposed to make sure that they are provided with PPE, and I want to know if they are not appropriate and what that means. And I'm sure I speak for all of you as well. Also, I want to know, Dr. Lowder, you had made a statement at one of the meetings that you meet with the the teacher rep groups and the parent rep groups. I want statements from them. Are they getting these same, I mean, who represents? We have the groups out in the parking lot, and we're glad to hear from them. We're glad that they're here. You know, I know that they probably don't think that, but we want to hear from them. You know, if you are not feeling unsafe in your environment, when we know that we have been told by the Health Alliance that we've done a phenomenal job making our campuses the most safe that they possibly could be anywhere else. We are mandating the mask. We are mandating the social distancing. We may all be somewhere in the middle of what that looks like. You know, the 3 W's, we're deep cleaning. All the teachers have a remote day every week that allows deep cleaning in our buildings. You know, we are doing really good things to make sure that these teachers enter into a very safe environment. We've had no exposures. You know, so there's a lot of things that speak to what the job is we're doing. So for us to be questioned and to be told that, you know, we're not doing our job and we're not providing the adequate, you know, safety measures for them, I want to know what that looks like. And I felt like that would come from the teachers' reps. I would like to see minutes, you know, from those meetings that state if they're unhappy or they're worried about that. We need to know that. You know, that's not a piece of information that I think has not been shared with us. So I would just like to go on record. I would like to have that myself.
All right, let me say a couple things. So first of all, let's be very clear. We have met the state guidelines. The state PPE was sent to Chuck Taylor and his group, and they've sent it out. We have a warehouse stocked ready to go right now with that information or that equipment. So that does not mean, for example, that a teacher may think that the state PPE is okay. So a teacher may say, well, I don't like what the state sent for PPE. Well, that's a different issue. But as far as what the state sent out, it was sent to all school systems as far as I'm aware, and they were given that, and in many cases were given more than that. So I guess as many things would be, we have to know individually who it is that you're speaking to. So I usually meet with the teacher rep group once a quarter. So we just ended the end of first semester. So usually we have a meeting coming up. So I'm not sure, you said you want to hear from teachers, so you want a statement from every teacher that attends?
No, I said I want to hear from what you're getting from your teacher rep meetings. Are you hearing that from your teacher rep meetings? You know, we're seeing the signs out in the parking lot that says no PPE, no whatever, that they're feeling unsafe. So you're right, that's maybe an individual's personal opinion, but we need to know as a board, is that a collaborative thought between teachers that there are some issues with PPE, or
Holly,
because you know that our emails are
Holly,
tremendous.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I think what I hear you asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, the things that we're being told by our superintendent that are happening, we're getting emails, and I mean hundreds of emails that say something different. So I guess what I hear you asking is, for the teachers who feel like they're not getting what our superintendent is telling us that they're getting, who do they contact? Where do they go? Where does that information go? Because it looks like there's some kind of communication breakdown or disconnect when this is happening, what we have outside. And you're telling us that we have all of this stuff here in our school and we're able to provide it.
Absolutely. So I would just like to know what kind of conversations you have because we don't get those reports after you've met with them. And I would like to know what they say. Do they agree with that? Do they say that, they feel like they are adequately provided with PPE? I just think the board would like to see that report of what comes out of that meeting.
And so you would just want the minutes from the teacher rep meeting, or I just want to make sure I get you what you're asking for.
Or, I think the minutes would reflect what they state. If you just want to give us a summary report of what came out of it regarding, were you given those concerns at a meeting? We're hearing this now, in the public. We're getting emails by, huge numbers stating something different, from what you're telling us, that they should have plenty at each campus. That's not what they're saying, and I just want to know,
Yeah, I'm not aware of anyone saying that they didn't get what was required by the state. Now, again, that would be different if someone says, well, I didn't get something that I approve of. So if someone says, I'm not getting what the state equipment or state that I was sent, then again, I haven't been given by the board the hundreds of emails that say what they have not gotten. So once I know what that is, then I can certainly try to resolve that.
I guess we could put this into a nutshell. Are you hearing from the teacher rep group that they feel like they do not or are not provided the appropriate PPE?
Yeah, it was not part of the last meeting. As I said, we're about to come up to when the next quarter would be. So that we had a teacher rep group. I think the last one was when we were about to go into B. And so Dr. Hill, part of that was Dr. Hill explaining that and us working with it. So PPE, while there may have been some questions, it was not a large part of that, but it certainly could be at the next one. So it's certainly something now that we'll ask and use from the teacher rep group.
Okay, great. Thank you. Brian, I'm sorry for the interruption. All right, Ms. Sanders, you continue.
So I thank everyone who worked on the task force. I truly appreciate what you've done, the time that you've committed to this district. It does not go unnoticed. Brian, thank you again for being able to facilitate this large group of folks. I know that was very difficult. What I took this task force report as a guide for the board. I didn't think that it was a end-all, be-all. I thought that, they were giving us recommendations to look at and discuss and make a determination from there. I will echo what Denise said. This metric looks very confusing to me, and I think that, before approving this, I see approval on the minutes, and before approving that needs to be very clear to all of us, and I feel like this is what we're going to be judged on. This is what we're going to be asked to follow, and if we're approving that, then we need to have a great understanding of what that looks like and then be able to break down those numbers and how that applies to what we will be doing. Those were the only things and I do know what report you're talking about, Denise, from the CDC. It does give you good great options, and maybe we can use that as a board to, kind of look at some of the things that are in here, great ideas for when you're not able to socially distance and what can be done and those things. And Brian, I look forward to seeing what you send me too, because that sounds interesting. But that's all I have.
Thank you. And before we move on, I'll just add one since you've touched on metrics. I guess my thought would be, Brian, and someone else may reference this, but my question, that metrics seems to be very, and I hate to use the word cumbersome, but there's just quite a bit of stuff there that I'm thinking that's a large amount of information to have to look at to go, what do we do, So my question is, and you don't have to answer this tonight, and it's really not on approval for tonight, it's our business meeting, yeah. So I'm asking, is there a possibility to merge 1, 2, and 3? So this is going to be page 7, and to maybe make that just a little more condensed or clear. I think it says a lot of the same thing, if you will, and if not, that's okay. I was just trying to look at it and think, gosh, that's quite a few things you have to look at to go, okay, where do we go from here? And then I would like to see, I know we've all talked about the dashboard for the website and, updating the quarantines versus the positive numbers. I thought at some point in time we asked that would be broken down into schools so that we had an idea of what was going on per school. Was there one school having more issues than another, some not had any? I don't know if we've done that. I don't know if the task force really talked about that at all.
Yeah, it was requested, and the response was that we could do that by as a whole, but individually it's an ever-changing target, and it would be difficult for staff, period, to put that on there because it is a moving target. It's much easier to pick a point in time and do the district as a whole.
Okay. I guess that confuses me because how do they come up with the overall number if they don't know the individual school numbers?
It's really how we can break down on the student side. It's about how we get a total number for a spread out of a spreadsheet.
Okay. I'll leave that with you. I just want you to kind of get an idea.
We'll continue to look at that. I know that's been requested, and I know the other part of that is there's a risk in some HIPAA type factors with identifying numbers at a school. So, and the risk goes up the smaller that the school is. Okay. And that's the other side of that too. So,
I could see that if we were identifying particular people or classification. I don't know. I thought an overall number, would not have been a really big deal. I get it about the HIPAA rules for sure. And if that's not, that's fine. That was just one of my, take a look at it. You let us know. The other was one site for everything. I feel like we have to go to a lot of different areas to try to pull information together. And I know when I was in one of those subgroups listening into some discussion, I don't know which one it was, but anyway, they talked about having one collective site. So, it's going to be really hard for us to go to 43 different schools, if they need to have their information. And that's what I was hearing, that some of the schools would like to have it on their websites, what their numbers are, so their parents can say, okay, we go to the website, which part of that is ours, and I really thought there was some validity to that. So some schools could say, okay, we're not really worried here, these numbers are not really identifying us, but to have that complete dashboard on the main website with all of it, it really, to me, that's good information so that we always constantly know what's going on, but it would be important for parents to know that, maybe their school is or isn't a part of some of those larger numbers. And you don't have to answer that tonight, but that was just one of my, points I thought we might want to try to look into to make it a little easier, an easier read, if you will. Okay?
I'm sorry, while we're there, because I have something along those lines.
Okay.
Can you just clarify briefly for us, Brian, how much information we can give about infections or people who are infected in our school buildings? Can you speak to the HIPAA around that?
Yeah, it really gets down to we don't want to even come close to identifying an individual. Obviously, you can't give names and you can't give that type of information. And I'd probably, I just wouldn't even want to come up to the ledge of risking that. So it really comes down that you can't identify a specific name. And even and I'll give an example of when we report out EOG and EOC data, So that's FERPA, that's not HIPAA. But there are schools that have small subgroups, so they won't report those out. Sometimes even like the percentages of students that pass tests when it's under a certain number. And typically that, and Dr. Hill might know what that is, but it's typically under 25. They won't even report that subgroup out because it runs the risk of identifying students. So that, I've always tended to be very cautious about that.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, that was one of the things in the hundreds of emails that we're getting is about full transparency of infection and full disclosure of cases. I guess if you're a teacher, you'd want to know if a student was positive.
Teachers have a few more privileges. Like, so if a child is in the care of an adult, then there's certain information that they're privileged to. So that the teacher next door wouldn't have privilege to that information to a student who is in their classroom.
Okay, but we're not withholding that. So
I'm sorry?
We're not withholding that information for the teachers?
No, when a teacher's directly impacted, no.
Okay. Again, I want to thank the work for this task force. Obviously, a lot of work, a lot of pages here, a lot of thought behind all this, and that's really what we ask the task force to do, is to give us some objective metrics to look at so this board can make a decision. It's not just my opinion or Laura's opinion or somebody else. We can actually use these metrics to come up with a decision. I don't think it's too terribly difficult. It's better than just having one metric to make the decision. We have 10 of them here, and at least 4, is it 4 or 5? 5 of them have to align before it's a recommendation to move from one plan to the next. But my question is, are you going to provide us a report that shows us where we are in these 10 every week, or where do we get this information? Where does the public get this information?
Yeah, so
to see where we stand.
The information that I provide to you every week, most of it is in that report that I provide you. It's not broken down exactly like this.
Well, it will be from now on.
So I sat down today and I just pulled up the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services website, and most of this information is on that website. Not about the particular quarantines or schools that are on Plan C or stuff that's more local, but the publicly verifiable data is, most of that is out there in the NCDHH's website.
So where did you find that we stand on those?
I'm sorry?
Where do we stand on those if you looked at those today?
So metrics 1 through 7, we are in the yellow, and some of those are closer to blue than others. Some are deep yellow. And then in metric 8, we are in the green. Metric 9, we're in the green. And then metric 10, we're in the medium level.
So we have 7 yellows, 2 green, and 1 blue. Okay. I mean, that would help us to determine what decision to make. That seems pretty simple to me. And then I have another question here.
Would you like me to go, Ms. Blackwell, to you, Ms. Blackwell?
Yeah, go ahead. That's
And
fine.
then I'll come back to you,
You come back to me.
Mr. Walter.
So, again, I'm going to echo what everyone else said, which is I greatly appreciate all of the work you've done. I really don't know how you find the time to be able to do all of that. I know you have a fantastic team. I know it's not just you, but you really do a great job. I cannot say enough
Thank you.
how well I think you do with this. I definitely think this is a lot of information for us to go through, for sure. And I, like Ms. Sandage, also pointed out, was that, this is kind of a guide for us to go by, but ultimately the decision does come down to the school board and what we decide to do with this moving forward. I did want to ask, because there is a page in here that talks about substitutes. And I didn't know where we were at right now. I've heard that there's been a great outreach of substitute applicants that have been applying to come and work in Cabarrus County schools, but I didn't know where we were with that right now, if we've hired any substitutes that will be able to help during this, transition, and if there has to be some quarantine with teachers and that kind of thing. So if you can speak to that.
Sure. I know that Dr. Louder, I think you have some numbers, correct? So I can't remember if we have those recent numbers, but I know there were like some categories of people that had applied and.
Yeah, we sent all of that information, the summary of the subs,
there's like
when they were
40
getting.
some in process.
Yes.
And
Which was what, maybe 2 weeks ago, when you have all of the ones who were in process, how many have applied, which ones weren't available, how much subs are paid, how that compares to counties around us. That's information.
yeah, and I know that there was a Friday I saw a report that had some substitute orientation on it. So I know that's in the work. I can get specifics from Ms. Jones to give you that, but the answer is yes, we have. That's ongoing and in process, and I know we have a current status as of about 2 weeks ago. And I know as recently as Friday, I saw an update on the orientation for substitutes. So I can get that information to you. I just don't want to misspeak on that one.
No, that's totally fine. I just wanted to see if we were progressing in the right direction with getting more substitutes to be able to help us to achieve Plan A.
Yeah, and the other thing that you'll notice if you go to the HR website and the career opportunities and the job postings, there are the jobs posted for the 4-day-a-week substitute teacher at the school, the one that's there until the end of the year. Some of those have been hired, some of those are in the process of hiring, but those have been posted, and principals are actively recruiting to hire those right now.
And I also wanted to ask a question too, when we were kind of discussing the HIPAA and just how we're, making sure that we're giving those folks as much privacy as possible. I just wonder, sometimes when we're saying like the whole volleyball team has been quarantined, I do feel like in some ways that kind of singles them out too. So that's already kind of calling attention to who are those that are having to be quarantined and that kind of thing. So, I don't know where the line is on that, but I do feel like in some ways we are inevitably going to have to identify in some way who people are when we're telling you that, a certain group is being quarantined. It is going to.
Yeah, we don't, and I'll just say, I feel the same way about the athletics piece, and we don't publicly announce that. So I'll just stop there. We don't publicly announce that unless we're asked publicly.
Okay. Mr. Walters, did you find your other question?
Couple. At what point do we go back to normal operations? Is that just a state decision? Or we don't have to worry about the masks, we don't have to worry about social distancing?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Here we have retention. This is page 12. We're going to see. This offers a driver bonus retention for quarterly $200 bonus and the annual $100 bonus if all criteria are met. Was there any discussion of what those criteria was and if that needed to be? Yeah,
those are in place. I don't.
It's in place, but is it too strict? Is it if they miss one day they don't get it? Is it more than that, or is it what is that?
I have to get that from Mr. Whitaker, so I can follow up in an email to you about that.
And then the last question had to do with testing. Is there anything in here about testing students or staff to help us with determinations?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Is there anything about testing students or staff to make a determination between plans?
Are you talking about the testing in terms of the PCR and antigen testing? No, we're still in pilot mode with those 6 schools. They did the soft launch last week for the rapid testing. Actually, that went really successfully last week, and so this is the first full week of the every day that they're doing that. I think there is a possibility that could expand. I just don't know the extent that could expand, and I don't believe that it could be to every school. But hopefully I'm proven wrong on that based on the brief experience that we had last week and how schools felt really positive about that.
Okay. Again, thank you for all the work that's been put into this.
Ms. Carpenter, you are next.
Thank you. One of the things that I was curious about, I kept hearing you say, one of our board members talking about using data from CDC, which it's fine to get some data, but, I'm one that really believes that we need to get data from, our doorstep, where we're at. Because CDC, it's fine to get some information from, but we really need to get stuff from where we're at, what's happening at home, what our what the numbers are here. Because Atlanta or CDC, they don't know what's going on right here at our doorstep. And so, things can be different in Atlanta or there than it is here. Because we're right now standing at a red county and our rates are a lot higher than it is there. So if it's a general type thing, that's fine. But that's why it's so important for us to stay our connections with the Health Alliance, because they know what's going on right here locally, and they're keeping track of that. Plus, they keep in contact with North Carolina, with CDC, and they're keeping contact with all that. So that's why it's so important that we do that. And two, I do want to thank all the members of the task force and for all their time and all their effort they put in to building these metrics and everything. I think we do need to tweak it some before we just automatically say, yeah, this is great. And I think we need to use this as a guide. I think there is still some concern out there with some of the parents too. I think I've received the same emails that everybody else has about the PPE. I think we just need to, if nothing else, when we do get those emails, let's just shoot them to Dr. Louder, let him see what we're seeing so he sees everything. And again, to make sure we're keeping this communication line going. And again, I think we've all said the same thing. We want to see these teachers vaccinated, and if we get that, make sure, and I think we've all tried to do that, make sure if we get that a website that they need to make sure that they are filling out, to fill out so they can get on the wait list, that they've got that, and us keep telling our legislators, make sure they're first in line for that. That's very important, and I think if they feel safe, that's a key thing. But again, I want to thank all the members for all their time and dedication in working this out. And again, I thank them all.
Mr. Furr?
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to be like the rest of the folks and thank you guys for all the hard work. It was a heck of an effort done in a short period of time, and definitely appreciate it. So I was looking at the decision tree recommendations. So I'm guessing maybe once a week or whatever, you'll send us something that says, like the example, 5 blue, 3 yellow, 2, or whatever, 5 green, 3 blue, 2 yellow, and then we go from there. Is that the way it's going to be? Yeah, you're going to give us a whole list of things and we determine. I think that would be real simple.
Larry, could you go back to the...
For us simple people.
The slide with, and I actually like this because I think it could potentially be simpler than the data that I send you all every week.
Yeah.
And so if you go back to the metric slide, please. Yeah, right there. So what it could be, and again, it's all what you want. It could be like, these boxes are here for a reason. It could be a check mark. Put it off to the side where it is.
Yeah.
So like if I did this one today, if I did this one based on last Thursday's data, the check mark here and like 60 plus. So you can kind of see where it is relative to that highest number. But I did hospitalizations. It's actually at 61 today, but it was at 50 last week. So 50 last week, it was in the blue, and a check mark here, but I'd probably put a 50 next to it or something. So it could And it's really simple to look at
Yeah.
when you do it that way. I know it's a lot, and there's a lot of numbers. They are distinctly different. They are kind of related to each other in some cases, but they are distinctly different. And then, Larry, if you go to the next slide, in order to get evidence of transmission in school, you have to know quarantine, you have to know positives, you have to know spread. So there's some that are a little more sophisticated like that one, that you have to have 2 or 3 data points to put into that to get that data point. This one is another, metric 10 is another one, where you have to have a lot of quarantine numbers by individual department, those kinds of things, to be able to figure that one out. But yeah, it could be as simple as that chart, check boxes and a number next to it.
We don't want to hear about the delivery, we just want to see the baby. Real simple for us, but no. And another thing that I like what you put on here, I know Rob called it a recommendation, but you guys actually, on this, it says consider. So when we get that information, that's not a recommendation, it's information for us to consider before we make a decision. Just want to point that out. Right? That's what it says.
Yeah, like I said, I think a recommendation is not, it's not a mandate, it's not a law, it's not a policy.
Yep.
It's a recommendation to consider.
Yeah.
So I would just like for the board to really review it. I know it was a lot of information. Let's get an email to Dr. Louder, Brian, and I, and Tim. Any additional, after having the discussion, any additional questions or concerns or information that you would like to have so that we can kind of clean some of that up for next Monday night and to continue the conversation so that we can start moving towards an approval and what that might look like. Denise, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just another, something I need to probably send out to everybody is when we were in our last meeting, there was some other groups of children that they wanted us to look at. And Brian sent us an email about that with clarifications on the student grouping action team. And I don't really know legality and all of that behind this, but I think that's something they wanted us to look at as well.
Okay, Brian, can you make sure that is addressed as well? Okay. So just with that being said, of course, this is going to be placed on action. And just to reiterate, if we can just all look at it really closely, let's put some things together in an email to Dr. Louder, Brian, and Tim and I, and then we can look and see if everyone has the same concerns. Are we moving down the same pathway with some things that we would like to see look differently, or if we're okay? I think that will just help kind of move the conversation a little quicker next week for us to move towards an approval process. And Brian, I absolutely want to say as well, thank you so much for the hard work. You have done a phenomenal job. I still look at that and think that we've done this in such a short amount of time, in 6 weeks, that it's taken us so long to get to this place, and it was just done so quickly in such a great manner. I mean, that's a lot of information. It's a great guide and lead for us to start with to move towards Plan A. It may need changes, but I do hear you on the metrics. As the more I looked at some of those, I think you're right. As much as they look alike and sound alike, they probably are different. But if we're looking at check boxes and not having to read all that verbiage, it probably would help as well. So, I hear that and I appreciate that. So with that being said, does the board have any other comments, questions?
I just want to make one comment.
I'm sorry, we should have left you out.
I also want to just commend Mr. Schultz for facilitating a very large group, which is very difficult to do, and to make that group feel like that they're heard and participate is very hard to do, and Brian's done a great job of that, so thanks. And I also just want to say, again, I think we talked about at the meeting on Saturday, how many people from the community were willing to jump in with all the other things that they're doing and be a part of the committee, school level people that are giving up their time to be able to do that. So again, I think it speaks to our community that people were willing to do it and wanted to help with that. So we want to say thanks to everybody who's given up their time to, try to help the school system. So thanks a lot.
And not to mention their holidays that all this fell in under as well, so that just says a lot, and how the people that were involved had this truly the best interest at heart of kids and getting kids back in school. So with that being said, I would like
Ms.
to.
Grimsley, may I say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just got one quick question, and I just thought about it because I actually got some emails, and this is nothing to do with task force. I guess it's a question for Dr. Louder and Brian, but, and you know, I look at things kind of simple, like, for instance, let's just take Mount Pleasant Elementary School, and you say you got a second grade class, and you got 100 students for 4 classes at 25 each. 25% stays at home, so that leaves you 3 classes with 25, and maybe you've given the each school this flexibility. I guess that's what I want to know. Do they have a flexibility to say, okay, I got 4 teachers, you 3, you teach in class, the 75 that's coming. The other 25, you'll be taught virtually by this particular teacher that's maybe's got an older teacher, underlying condition. Are they looking at it, each individual school like that? To me, because I think that's something each principal could probably do in a matter of hours when they get the number of kids that are coming back. Is that a...
Yeah, so Dr. Hill and her directors, especially Ms. Reeves, because obviously elementary school is the one that's coming in first, has been working on how they can be flexible. Unfortunately, what happens is, and this happens with class sizes, kids don't come in perfect little compartments to say, well, this amount exactly will fit into that. So let's just go with your example. Let's say that 80 of the kids want to be in person and only 20 of the kids want to be. Well, then now all the class sizes are off because of that, right? So now the virtual one has 10 kids in it and the other classes have 27 kids in it, I'm just making up numbers, then that's where it won't always play out. So it might play out in one grade level, It might play out in that, but again, Dr. Hill and Ms. Reeves are working with principals, well, what can we be flexible about and what can't we? Because there are times when, no, you can't be, but we certainly want to be whenever it works to ultimately meet the students, because again, it has to be, the priority has to be what works best for the students and how to teach them, not necessarily what preferences may be or how that works. Is here's what the situation is, how can we best teach the kids? And so she's actually been doing quite a bit of that over the past couple weeks, because yes, sometimes we can say, yep, that's perfectly good, that works, because Dr. Hill and Ms. Reeves are going to have to work on it, but other times it'll be, well, it won't work with this grade level. But then we want to make sure that we treat people across the district equal. So the answer is yes, but it sometimes is not as simple as what you just said or equitable, and we're always trying to be that way.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to see if when it was feasible to do it, they had flexibility to do that at each local school.
Okay, so Board, I need a motion to convene in closed session to consult with an attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to General Statute 143-318-11A3, and to consider confidential personnel matters pursuant to General Statute 143-318-11A and 6.
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Blackwell.
Second.
A second by Ms. Adcock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Thank you. That was a unanimous. And we would just like to take this time to say thank you to the viewing audience that has joined us tonight. We would also like to say a special thank you to the SRO officers, both the county and the city, that was here with us tonight as well. Thank you for your input. We appreciate all that you've done and said. We've gotten a lot of emails and messages stating different opinions. We really, we want to hear from you. We do. It's a vast amount of information for us to go through. We know the frustration that sometimes you do not get an immediate reaction. We work on that consistently. We would like to say to those teachers that are sending emails to the board regarding concerns about PPE and safety issues and concerns, that you please copy Dr. Louder. I think you've heard him say that you would like to be copied on those emails, and that may make that situation a whole lot easier to resolve. It may just be a simple pushback to the campuses, and maybe just an easier answer than we even think that's out there. So once again, we say thank you for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you next Monday night, February the 8th, at our business session, and good night.